Hello everyone, Gino What If here. Bring in the finale of What If the Transformers crash landed in Code Geass. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Rise of the Decepticons. Euphemia and Cornelia, still completely ensered in webbing, watched in genuine horror as they saw their home being completely destroyed. Though they could also see from the screen next to it, the ongoing battle in Japan, in which they were each very concerned about specific individuals they care for, they were more shocked and mortified by the fate that befell the palace they once called their home. Their stunned silence was interrupted by Arachnid's laugh as she continued to watch, not taking her eyes off the screen. Now this is entertainment. Though honestly, I don't really care much for what Megatron intends to do after this, I just like the idea watching so many people burn. It's nothing personal to Britannia, I don't hate them the way the rest of your world does, I just like watching people squirm. And the best part, she glanced toward the two bound sisters. Once it's all said and done, and all your friends and family in Tokyo are finished off as well, I get to do whatever I want to both of you. She lulled in anticipation. But for right now, let's save that for the end. She turned back toward the screen to continue watching the bloodshed as if she were watching her favorite television show. Euphemia was already crying at fact that so many people died all just because she wanted to help them, to help Lelouch, Suzaku, Nunnally, and Optimus. Now look at what's happened. First her idea of the special zone turned into a literal bloodbath, with the one to start it being someone who bore her face. Now the Decepticons have all but conquered Britannia, and while she had no love for her father, she was genuinely concerned about many of her half-siblings and some of the people in Britannia that she knew were innocent. And now, she was all but helpless as she had a sinking feeling in her heart that an even worse fate was in store for Lelouch, Suzaku, and everyone else she cared about in Japan. Cornelia glanced at her younger sister as she continued to watch her sob. She couldn't even reach out to comfort her, or even speak in consolidation with her mouth covered by Arachnid's webs. Even though she did not always agree with Euphi, she still loved her sister and was all the more heartbroken at seeing her like this. Seeing Euphi in such a state, Cornelia couldn't help but recall when her little sister came to her before the Kyushu incident and practically begged her to stop all the fighting. Maybe if she actually listened, none of this would be happening. She had always known that the Decepticons were untrustworthy, but she could never have expected this. What's even worse, Zero, the enemy she swore to capture and or kill was her own brother. Lelouch was Zero. The more she thought about it, the more obvious it seemed. He and Nunnally were both exiled by their father just because they wanted to see justice for the death of their mother, her own idol, Marianne. Then, they were sentenced to death by their own father when Japan was invaded, and he didn't even take responsibility for it. It was no wonder why Lelouch did what he did. His family betrayed him, she betrayed him. Had she actually done it, had she actually captured and killed Zero, not only would she have killed her own brother, whom she loved since he was born, but she would have utterly broken Nunnally's heart. And all she could do at this point was blame herself as all those she cared for, Euphemia, Lelouch, Nunnally, Nonette, Guilford, Darlton, they were now about to be wiped out by an even worse monster than she could ever consider her father to be. Oh God, Cornelia thought to herself as tears were already streaming down her eyes. Lelouch, Nunnally, what have I done? The teary-eyed Cornelia paid another glance at her sister. I'm sorry Euphi. I'm so sorry. She thought as she openly sobbed. Euphi looked toward her sister in a mixture of shock and sympathy. The only time she had ever seen Cornelia like this, was when they first heard of Lelouch and Nunnally's apparent deaths once Japan fell. Cornelia, what can I do? Euphi thought as she desperately prayed for a miracle, some way they can all escape this horror. What would Lelouch do? What would Suzaku or Optimus do? However, those thoughts also forced her to recall something, having been struck by an epiphany. She felt around her sides as best she could, being constricted the way she was. All she could do was pray Arachnid didn't take it when she was kidnapped. She felt her right side, in her pocket and could feel something. A square-like shape that she recognized, the phone that Lelouch gave her back on Kaname Island. She still had it. Grabbing hold and pulling out of her pocket as gently as she could without dropping it, Euphi gave it a gentle yet firm push, Hopping it was enough to break through Arachnid's webbing, while also being careful not to alert the Shikan. Sure enough, the phone was able to slip through the strands of webbing while Yuffie kept hold to make sure she didn't drop it. Yuffie gave a small muffle to Cornelia, hopping to get her attention. Once her older sister paid another teary glance toward her, Yuffie quietly motioned her eyes down to her side, causing Cornelia to notice the phone she had on her. Cornelia's eyes widened in surprise. Maybe there was still hope. She felt around her arm for the knife that she always had hidden on her. Though she didn't use it up until now because she knew that without a nightmare, she couldn't do anything to protect her sister from Arachnid. But she can do something now. Underneath the webbing, Cornelia was able to let her knife slide down into her hand and made sure to cut through a small hole in the webbing as quietly as she could, one enough that allowed her hand to move freely and reach out for the phone. It was almost a close call. Yuffie almost let the phone slip, but Cornelia was able to catch it. Thankfully, Arachnid was too distracted by the battle and slaughter on the screen, she didn't notice. Cornelia flipped the phone open, causing her eyes to widen once she saw only one contact number on it that read, Lelouch. Did Yuffie know Lelouch was 0? They were alone on Kaname Island, which also explains why she lied about it to her. She was worried what would happen to their brother, and Cornelia didn't blame her. But now was not the time to worry about that. With a firm glance and nod to Yuffie in understanding, Cornelia pressed the button to send a call to Lelouch and pray that he was able to get it and send help as soon as possible. Tokyo Settlement, Royal Palace. Darlton's Gloucester was grazed by the Gawaine's Hadron Cannon, which was enough to destroy the float system, causing it to tumble onto the roof of the palace. Specifically the garden area, leaving Guilford alone as he fired his Gloucesters/Harkins at the Gawaine, which blocked it once Zero activated the Blaze Luminous system, allowing Zero to quickly throw out the Gawaine's right arm to shoot all 5/Harkins at the enemy Nightmare, which could barely avoid it as Guilford's float system was skewered, forcing him to fall down toward his fellow knight. They're both down, CC reported. Something's not right, Lelouch said. Where's Cornelia? It's not like her to just sit out. She's always at the front lines. Maybe she's somewhere else on the battlefield. CC replied. Then why haven't we heard that from anyone else? Lelouch questioned as a pit began to form in his stomach. You too. He spoke through the speakers of his nightmare, addressing the two Britannian knights. Where is Cornelia? What? Guilford questioned in confusion. She's away from the battlefield. Zero continued. That's rather out of character for her, don't you think? Where is she? Why would you ask something like that when you were the one who captured her? Darlton exclaimed, much to Lelouch's shock. What are you talking about? Prince Schneisel had informed us that you have captured both Princess Cornelia and Princess Euphemia. Guilford stated. They were both taken shortly after the special zone turned into a massacre. Lelouch glanced down at CC, who looked just as confused as he did. Why would Schneisel? Lelouch then felt a vibration on his side, and took out his cell phone in confusion only to look in shock as he saw the caller ID. Yuffie. His eyes widened once the pieces came to place. Did the Decepticons capture Cornelia too? Of course, it makes sense. He scowled as he contacted the Ark. Fix it. I need you to trace a signal for me. Back on the front lines. The Britannian military had almost been completely pushed back as Ogi continued to lead the charge. Meanwhile Ironhide and Suzaku continued to duke it out with the hovering Mordred as it fired Varus weapons at the pair, but Suzaku shot directly at the Mordred, lashing out with one of the Lancelot's MVS blades, but the Mordred quickly brought up its Blaze Luminous shield to block the attack, before actually throwing out the right arm of the heavily armored Nightmare to knock the Lancelot back. Ironhide tried to fire his Energon cannons at the large Nightmare, only for the Mordred to fly straight towards the veteran Autobot, prompting him to try and catch and halt the Nightmare's advance with his bare hands, but somehow, the Mordred was actually able to not only push Ironhide back, but even shoot itself directly up to deck Ironhide before blasting at the ground with the Varus weapons to knock him back. Something's not right, Suzaku stated as the Lancelot stood side by side with the recovering Ironhide. This isn't how Anya fights. She's never this reckless. Yeah, you might be right. Ironhide commented. Before, this kid would always fight from one spot, using long-distance weapons as opposed to direct combat. But now, it's like she's a completely different person. Anya, it's Suzaku. The former Britannian soldier, turned Black Knight, called to her. What's happening to you? Please just talk to me. From within the Mordred, the possessed Anya only smirked. Sorry Suzaku, but I've got nothing to say to you. Marianne thought as she was about to press the attack, only to be completely caught off guard by Wheeljack, who shot forward in his vehicle mode from an alleyway of 2 ruined buildings and up a makeshift ramp to ram into the Mordred, and send it crashing across the ground before the White Wrecker transformed and landed right by the Lancelot and Ironhide. Wheeljack! Ironhide exclaimed in surprise. Aren't you supposed to be in the air with Dreadwing? We were, until we ran into a bit of a speed bump. Wheeljack replied. What do you mean, speed bump? Suzaku asked in confusion. That, Wheeljack shouted as he pointed toward a building that suddenly began to collapse as the massive, humanoid Siegfried, crashed out, struggling to pull of Dreadwing that had his arms wrapped around the head unit before it reached up to grab the former Seeker and throw him into the air. Fortunately, Dreadwing transformed into his jet mode and shot down to fire a pair of misses at the Siegfried, forcing it to cross its arms and take the blast right as Dreadwing transformed back and landed next to his 3 allies. What the scrap is that? Ironhide shouted as the smoke cleared to reveal the Siegfried was only partially damaged. You, Autobots! The crazed cyborg, Jeremiah, exclaimed. But once his eyes set upon the Lancelot, it seemed a deranged smile fell on Jeremiah's face. Suzaku Kururugi. Is that you? What fortune? Suzaku's pupils shrunk. I know that voice. Jeremiah. That took Ironhide by surprise. The head of the purebloods. But I thought Colin killed him at Naratia. The Decepticons must have recovered his body and rebuilt him. Dreadwing assumed. Britannia is not capable of this kind of technology. Suzaku only scowled at the thought of that. He didn't even let Jeremiah rest in peace. He did this to him. He thought as more rage and hate filled his being. Heads up. Wheeljack warned as the quartet could only barely avoid more Varus blasts from the recovering Mordred. But before they could counterattack, they got a sudden transmission. Suzaku. This is Zero. I think we've found Euphemia's location. To say he was shocked was an understatement. What? So much of a shock, that it left him open for the Siegfried to deliver a smack with the back of its right arm to send the Lancelot tumbling across the ground, only for it to be pelted and pushed back by the energon blasts of Ironhide as Wheeljack leapt from behind to impale his swords into it from behind, causing Jeremiah to yell insanely as he attempted to shake the Autobot off. Suzaku, keep your mind on the battle. Dreadwing told him as he pulled out his energon cannon to shoot at the Mordred and keep it back, while the heavily armored Nightmare flew to try and avoid the blasts, while also using the Blaze Luminous for defense. But, Dreadwing, you heard that right. Yuffie, Suzaku stuttered as the Lancelot recovered. I heard, but we must stay focused. Dreadwing stated. Zero, are you certain of this? I am. Lelouch confirmed. We've traced the location to Kaname Island and Fix-It has a ground bridge prepared. We're sending the 2 of you to rescue her. I might also have reason to believe that Cornelia is with her. Ordinarily, Suzaku wouldn't hesitate to jump on the chance to rescue Euphemia, but he also remembered they were in the middle of a major battle with Ironhide and Wheeljack struggling to keep the advanced Siegfried and Mordred back. Suzaku, go. Ironhide ordered him, almost as if he could read his thoughts, while also firing at the Siegfried that still had Wheeljack clinging to its back. You too, Dreadwing. But, what about you? Suzaku asked with concern. Ironhide only responded by transforming into his vehicle mode and gunning straight into the Siegfried's legs to trip it up, with Wheeljack using this to jump from the falling Siegfried's back and leap straight for the hovering Mordred and slam both his feet into it. Though Marianne was quick to try and bring up the Blaze Luminous system to shield herself, the impact was enough to send the Mordred crashing into a building. Yeah, I think we got this. Ironhide smirked in confidence and assurance towards Suzaku and Dreadwing. You two just rescue the damsels, the old-timer and I got this. Wheeljack also said as he gave a salute with one of his swords. Very well, we'll leave you to it. Dreadwing said as he glanced at the Lancelot, with Suzaku having a serious expression. Yuffie, I'm coming. I won't let you down again. I will save you. Suzaku thought. Lelouch, we're ready. A few seconds later, a ground bridge portal opened up behind the pair, prompting the Lancelot and Dreadwing to make their way into the portal right before it closed, leaving Wheeljack and Ironhide alone to deal with the recovering Siegfried and Mordred. "Think you can keep up, old-timer?" Wheeljack cracked toward Ironhide. "Just be sure you don't eat my dust, kid." Ironhide cracked back as they charged towards the enemy. Ashford Academy. What was once a popular and peaceful school had turned into a battleground as Bumblebee was sent crashing into the empty girls' dorm, glancing up at the towering Insecticon over him. "Leave it to Megatron to send a bug to do his dirty work." Bumblebee glared at Hardshell as he stood back up. Hardshell growled slightly. "You'd know a thing or two about dirty work yourself, Scout." "Do I know you?" Bumblebee questioned. "I've heard all about you," Hardshell replied. "And I promise that you'll lose more than just your voice box when I'm through with you." "Bring it, Bug," Bumblebee challenged as he rolled out of the way of Hardshell's punch before firing his energon blasters as he ran along Hardshell's side, but this only served to irritate him as he attempted to rush the Autobot Scout. At the same time, around another area of the school, Ratchet drove in his ambulance form with Cecile Sutherland right beside him as a different Insecticon ran after them before leaping over the pair to halt their advance, but Ratchet only pressed on the gas even further before transforming right at the Insecticon, using his own momentum to ram into it and knock it down. "Stay down," Ratchet told it as he drew his blades. "I must perform surgery." However, the Insecticon easily slugged him to knock him off. The Insecticon felt a small pain on its right side as Cecile used her Sutherland's rifle to shoot at it and get its attention, prompting the Insecticon to roar as it tried to rush her, forcing Cecile to shoot her Sutherland into the air, but the Insecticon was quick to grab the custom Nightmare by the foot to slam it back down, shaking Cecile inside before throwing the Nightmare at the recovering Ratchet, causing them to crash into a separate building. Ratchet groaned as he tried to get up, but his optics widened at the sight of an electric generator that was only a few feet from his head. "What is that?" "It's the school's backup generator," Cecile informed as her Sutherland, which was only barely functional, began to stand up. If the settlement were to somehow lose power, this would keep Ashford's power running. Ratchet then got an idea as he glanced at the Insecticon they were facing, before glancing upward to see the Florence fighting the remaining Insecticon in aerial combat. "Contact your knight up there. I have a plan." Ratchet glanced back at the generator to give Cecile the hint. Her eyes widened in surprise before they narrowed. "All right, I'm in," Cecile said as Ratchet rushed toward the Insecticon to get its attention and keep it distracted. Meanwhile, in the air, the Florence flew and avoided the energon blasts from the flying Insecticon that gave pursuit of her. Monica flipped the Florence higher into the air while shooting her Harkins to try and trip up the Insecticon, but it flipped itself to avoid the impact as it tried to ram and impale her with its horn, but she just barely avoided the impact, only for the Florence's left arm to be severed. "Damn it," Monica muttered. "Lady Kruszewski." Cecile contacted her. "The campus power generator is directly below you. Try to crash the enemy into it." "Copy." Monica wasn't in the mood to question as she realized just how much of a threat these Insecticons were. She locked her Nightmare onto said generator and shot directly at the flying Insecticon, who flew at her as well, firing energon blasts, almost as if the two were playing a game of chicken. Once they were close enough, Monica lashed out the Florence's right arm, extending the MVS claws at the right second, to clip the Insecticon's wings and send it falling down. Just a few seconds before, Ratchet had been in his vehicle mode, acting as bait as the remaining Insecticon gave chase, crashing through any building or obstacle that lay in its way. The Autobot medic was gunning straight for the power generator as he saw the Insecticon Monica had knocked down tumbling straight for it. Timing it just right, Ratchet skidded to a sudden halt as he swerved his vehicle mode to trip up the Insecticon chasing him and send it skidding across the ground right in front of the power generator just as the falling Insecticon crashed into it. Boom! Asterisk. The explosion was enough to engulf both Insecticons, sending several broken pieces flying across the area as the Florence landed right beside the regrouping Sutherland piloted by Cecile and Ratchet. "Hey, are you okay?" Monica asked Ratchet, upon seeing how out of breath he was, though it did feel awkward, asking that to someone who is of the enemy faction. "I'm a medic, not a warrior," Ratchet said. "I can fight, but it's not exactly my comfort zone." "Regardless, that was a good plan," Cecile said. "Thanks, but we're not out of the woods yet," Ratchet told them. Almost on K, All three of them were sent tumbling with a crash by Bumblebee, who had been sent flying into them, forcing all four of them to skid and tumble over each other across the ground. They glanced up to see Hardshell approaching them as he rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. "You may have vanquished two of my brothers, but let's see how you fare against the fiercest Insecticon." Hardshell challenged as he went on the attack. Meanwhile, inside the school, Millie had led Shirley, Rivals, Lloyd, as well as Arthur, into the room where the Ganymede was being housed. "Nina," Millie called out as all four of them looked in shock to see her inside the Ganymede's cockpit with a large rod-like device attached to its chest by a series of clamps and wires. "Nina, what are you doing?" Shirley exclaimed. "Princess Euphemia will be avenged," Nina muttered with a dangerous look in her eyes. "What the heck did you do to that nightmare?" Rivals questioned. "Nina, are you testing your theory?" Lloyd asked. "I didn't have time to test it," Nina muttered. "Lloyd, please tell me that's not what I think it is." Millie gulped. "It's exactly what you think it is," Lloyd said in a dreadful tone. "It's a prototype nuclear reactor that I arranged to give to her. Seems like she's hooked it directly into the Ganymede." "Nuclear?" Rivals' eyes widened in dread. "You gave he a freaking bomb. Are you crazy?" "I didn't intend for it to be a bomb," Lloyd replied. "But if it goes off, it'll destroy the entire city." Shirley gave an audible gasp as she knew that would kill everyone in the settlement. All the Autobots and Black Knights, all their friends, Lelouch, Colin, Rai, and Suzaku. "Nina, please, you can't do this," Shirley exclaimed, trying to persuade her friend. "You're a Black Knight, a terrorist," Nina screamed, almost like she was about to have a mental breakdown. "I thought you were my friend, Shirley." "I am," Shirley replied. "I'm sorry I never told you, any of you." She paid a last glance toward Millie and Rivals before turning back to Nina. "But, I couldn't just sit on the sidelines anymore, not without knowing all the terrible things Britannia has done." "It's the 11s who are terrible," Nina argued. "They kidnapped us at the hotel. How can you forgive them for that?" "They're not all like that," Shirley protested. "Sure, there are bad people, but, have you ever considered why things are like that? It's because Britannia took their home from them. Growing up, we've been taught that Britannia is the greatest nation in history, and all our expansion and conquering is our way of showing the world our greatness. But that's nothing but a lie. The people of this world are terrified of Britannia. They don't see our greatness. They hate us. And we deserve it. We've ruined so many lives. The Black Knights and Autobots aren't the real monsters, Britannia is." Even Princess Euphemia saw that. Nina gave a gasp once she heard Shirley say that name. Realizing she had her attention, the brunette continued as she walked up a nearby ladder to speak on equal level with Nina. "Why do you think she created the special zone? To help the people who have been suffering. Britannia may be horrible, but Euphemia isn't. All she wanted was to help. She didn't care they were Japanese, she saw them suffering and couldn't stand it anymore. She created the zone for the reason I became a Black Knight, to help people." "But, she's not, the Decepticons," Nina stuttered. "I know," Shirley nodded. "They kidnapped her and replaced her with a machine to start a massacre. It was a horrible sight, and I can't even begin to imagine how the surviving people think of all that. You have every right to hate the Decepticons, even with how horrible Britannia is, they are even worse. But is this really what you think Euphemia would want? Nina, look inside yourself and ask, would Euphemia really want everything to be destroyed? And for you to sacrifice yourself while doing it?" Nina hung onto every word and did as Shirley said. She thought back to that time when Euphemia brought her into her home and welcomed her with a smile. She was so kind and gentle, not like someone like Cornelia, who was a soldier. "No, she wouldn't," Nina muttered with a teary expression. "Then, let it go," Shirley told her sincerely as she put a hand on her shoulder. "You're a good person, Nina. Euphemia would not want you to throw all that away out of spite. For her sake, turn back while you still have a chance. And give me a chance to be a better friend. Please." Nina glanced at Shirley and saw the serious and pleading expressions in her eyes. She could tell that Shirley meant every single word she said. And because of that, Nina said as she powered down the Ganymede, causing everyone to sigh in relief. "Thank God," Millie muttered with relief as Shirley helped Nina down, who were greeted by Rivals as he helped them as well. Well, now that all the happy speeches are out of the way, let's make like piñatas and beat it. Lloyd said causally. Despite his tone, none of them could agree more as Shirley accessed her earpiece. Bumblebee, Ratchet, everything's fine. We're ready to go. However, she was surprised to hear the sounds of battle on the other end, with Ratchet grunting in pain. Ratchet, B, what's going on? Are you guys okay? She asked with concern. We're a little occupied at the moment. She heard Ratchet say before she heard a painful yell, followed by an Insecticon's roar. You'll have to ground bridge out of here yourselves. It was suddenly cut off, much to Shirley's shock. Hello, Ratchet. Shirley, however, got no response, which only caused her to look in worry, much to the concern of her friends. Hey, what's happening? Rivals asked. They're in trouble, Shirley stated. I gotta help them. You mean, we gotta help them, right? Millie told her, much to Shirley's shock. If you think for 1 second that I'm going to let one of my best friends take on evil giant alien robots, then you got another thing coming. I'm in too. Rivals stepped up. The Autobots saved us before, now it's our turn to return the favor. If you say it's what Princess Euphemia would want, then I'll help too. Nina stuttered before standing firm as well. Considering that I'm officially a traitor, I'm in too. Lloyd said, still maintaining his casual demeanor. Guys, I don't know if Shirley, despite being touched by her friend's support, was gravely concerned about them as well. However, once she spotted the Ganymede and the built-in nuclear reactor, an idea came to her head. Hey, how big of an explosion would that make if it were to go off? Well, I haven't exactly thought of that. Lloyd answered. But, best guess, a maximum range of just under 6 kilometers in radius. Why? Shirley then accessed her comms again. Fix-It, are you there? I read you, Shirley, what is it? Fix-It asked on the other end. What's the highest point we can reach with the ground bridge? She asked. What do you mean? Fix-It didn't quite seem to understand. I mean, how high in the sky can we make a ground bridge portal? Shirley clarified. We've never actually tested that. But, it is reasonable to believe that the highest point above the planet's surface would be around 2,000 kilometers, at low orbit. Why do you ask? Fix-It responded. That was all Shirley needed to hear as she turned back to her friends with a confident smile. I've got an idea. Royal Palace. Optimus swung his axe down toward the Galahad, his and Bismarck's duel continuing in the lower levels of the palace, specifically in empty Nightmare Bay. However, Bismarck steered the Galahad back before quickly shooting at Optimus, who attempted to roll out of the way, but the Galahad swung its MVS sword down toward Optimus was to slice and trip him up. However, Optimus was quick to recover, but was forced on the defensive as he attempted to block the incoming sword strike with his axe, but the Galahad actually swung in a different area on Optimus' side to send him crashing onto the wall. Optimus Prime got up and felt a bleeding gash along his left side, with energon already leaking. It wasn't anything to worry about, but he was still concerned. Bismarck's fighting style has changed considerably. It's as if he can know my moves before I make them. You look confused, Bismarck said with a grin, the Geass sigil in his left eye glowing brightly. You're likely affiliated with CC, so I can assume you're already aware of Geass. Optimus, optics widened in shock. You possess a Geass as well. Indeed, Bismarck confirmed, his grin growing wider. My ability allows me to see the future. He rolled the Galahad straight for Optimus, who transformed and shot out of the way to avoid it. As he swerved around, Bismarck looked at the Autobot leader's intended path. From Bismarck's point of view, it was almost the exact opposite of after images as he the transparent form of his target, Optimus Prime, 3 seconds ahead of where the real one was going to be. As Optimus, truck mode kicked into maximum overdrive in an attempt to ram Bismarck, hopping the sudden speed boost would catch him off guard. However, the Galahad actually jumped above Optimus just before he made contact, forcing the Prime to transform so he wouldn't crash into the wall. No normal human could have reacted that quickly. Optimus thought, which means, he can see into the future. Only once before, I used this power when I battled Lady Marianne. Bismarck revealed, while I do respect your strength and tenacity Optimus Prime, I refuse to fall even to the likes of you. He shot the Galahad at Optimus, who attempted to swerve out of the way as he simultaneously brought his axe to his side in an attempt to parry the sword strike from the Galahad. Though he blocked it, the force sent Optimus skidding back on his feet. CC would have told us about his Geass if she had known about it. Optimus continued to think as he went on defense against Bismarck's attacks. Which means, his power likely came from VV. But regardless, every Geass ability we have seen thus far has its limits. Lelouch's, Ray's, even Mao's, they've all had their weaknesses. His is no different. And I will find it. Military Depot. More explosions continued to rock the entire area as Tamaki and his squadron of heavily armed beret opened fire with missiles and other heavy payloads around the area where their comrades duked it out with the terrible trio of Breakdown, Knockout, and Dorothea. Bulkhead slammed his mace against Breakdown's face, who retaliated with a hammer strike to Bulkhead's own face. Bulkhead then punched Breakdown in the gut, which Breakdown responded with a headbutt before firing his missile shoulder at Bulkhead to send him crashing into a ruined building. Breakdown didn't get a chance to celebrate however as he was blasted back by a series of missiles on the ground courtesy of Tamaki and two other wrecker units. Rai used his Gekka's katana to block the buzzsaw strike from Knockout, their weapons creating sparks from the revolving parts grinding against each other, while Nonette guarded Ray's back in the Galician as she used her Nightmare's Blaze Luminous system to block the gunfire of Dorothea's Palamedes, but Nonette responded with a slash Harken, which Dorothea batted away with her Nightmare's sword before charging at her. Rai, switch, Nonette told him. No time to argue, Rai turned his Gekka away from Knockout, allowing the Galician to deliver a spinning kick, having taken a page from Suzaku's book, to knock the red Decepticon down while Rai shot out his Gekka's Surger Claw, activating it just as Dorothea brought her Nightmare's blade down, the sword melting and blowing up on impact and allowing Rai to swing his sword at her, but she pulled the Palamedes back. She was also forced on the defense as more Wrecker Beret opened fire with their rifles and missile silos, forcing her to pull back on her Nightmare, with Knockout transforming and doing the same to outrun the explosions on his tail. Ah yeah. That's what you get for messing with the wreckers. Tamaki shouted. Tamaki. Zero made contact. I need you and your squadron back on the front lines. Ironhide and Wheeljack are in trouble and they need your help, now. What? Come on, we're winning here. Tamaki complained. Don't you got Kururugi and Dreadboy there, too? We've discovered Euphemia's location and they've gone to rescue her. We need you at the lines, now. That is an order. Zero told him. Tamaki grumbled as he knew his leader had a point. Alright, send us a ground bridge. A portal soon opened up behind his Nightmare. Bulkhead, Rai, most of us gotta go. We heard. Bulkhead exclaimed as he ran to tackle Breakdown before pinning him down and bringing his massive fists down on him. Get going. We got this. Alright, Wrecker Squad, move out. Tamaki ordered all the beret as they drove into the portal before closing. As Bulkhead tried to bring down both his fists onto Breakdown, the equally large Decepticon caught them before using his own strength to throw Bulkhead over him and send him rolling across the ground, but the green Autobot quickly recovered as Ray's Gekka, and Nonette's Galician covered him from both sides to glare at Breakdown, who was regrouped by Knockout and Dorothea's Palamedes. All six of them glared at the opposing side before each of them yelled at the top of their lungs right before charging at full force. Power Station. RC used her arm blades to block and parry the sword strikes from one Valkyrie Vincent before jumping over to land a solid kick and knock it down. Only to be put on defense again from the second Valkyrie Vincent, using her right arm blade to block a sword thrust while converting her left hand into an Energon blaster and scoring a direct hit on the head to blast it off it before finishing the entire Nightmare off with an upward vertical slice to cut what was left in half, right before it exploded. Colin was caught in the middle of the remaining two Valkyrie Vincents, using her Gurren's knife to hold back the sword against one, while using her Surger Claw to block the sword of the other. However, Colin used this to her advantage to twist the Gurren's legs and spin her Nightmare around like a top to twist and send the two Vincents rolling across the ground. However, Colin was able to reach out and grab one of them by the head with her Surger Claw before activating it, sending a wave of radiation through the Nightmare before it finally exploded. Luciano fired missiles from his Percival's shield at Gino's Tristian as he flew into the air and around the building and power station ports so that the missiles impacted them instead of his own Nightmare before flying in with a strike of his sword. Nah, Luciano teased as he thrusted his Percival's drill into the ground to spit up some rubble and block the Tristian's path, allowing Luciano to try and thrust his drill in up close, which Gino attempted to block by crossing his Tristian's blades, which resulted in them shattering before the force sent him skidding across the ground. "Ah, poor little Gino," Luciano mocked. "You only got to where you were because of your standing. I might be ranked lower than you, but I'm still the genius of homicide, and a far more capable warrior than you. Then how about I tag in?" Cliffjumper suddenly shot at the Percival in his vehicle mode, which Luciano attempted to destroy with his Nightmare's drill weapon, but Cliffjumper had already transformed and swerved around it to deal a punch to the Percival's side and send it crashing into a nearby wall. "Thanks," Gino said as he stood his Tristian up. "Don't mention it," Cliffjumper smiled back, "and call me Cliff." "Well then tell me, Cliff," they heard Luciano speak as they saw his Percival emerge from the dust and debris. "Do you know the prime truth of the battlefield? Kill a man off the field and you're a criminal. But kill him on it, and you're a big hero." Cliffjumper looked at the Percival with a frown. "So, the Vampire of Britannia wants to be a hero, huh? A true knight in shining armor, is that right?" "No, not at all," Luciano replied without any hesitation. "War allows me to, officially, take what people value most, their lives." "Well, at least you admit you're a murderous psychopath," Cliffjumper said. "So, you probably won't take it personally when I kick your ass." "You mean, we kick his ass?" The Tristian rolled by Cliff's side. "Yeah, that sounds about right," Cliff agreed as they faced the Luciano's Percival. "Well, then by all means," Luciano said with a sickening grin. "Kick my murderous, psychopathic, bloodthirsty ass," he challenged as the Percival flew right at them. Kaname Island, Arachnid's cave. "Ooh, looks like the finale's just about here." Arachnid watched in eagerness as she saw, from the screen showing the situation at Pendragon, the nemesis hovering over the Pendragon royal palace, ready to blast it into oblivion. "I hope you're watching, ladies, because this is where the real fun starts." Arachnid turned back to the two webbed-up princesses. Upon seeing her looking in their direction, it was enough to startle Cornelia into dropping the phone that Euphemia gave her, cluttering on the ground and getting Arachnid's attention. What's this?" She went to inspect it, causing Euphy and Cornelia to panic, realizing they had just been busted. "A phone." Arachnid's optics widened before a scowl formed on her face. "You called for help," she hissed as she glared at the two princesses, with Euphy looking the most frightened. "Really wish you didn't do that. I could have taken my sweet time with you too. But I promise, I'm definitely going to make it hurt. So, let's start with little Euphy here." As Arachnid brought her claws closer to Euphemia, all she could do was muffle a scream in pure terror underneath the web gag, with Cornelia doing the same, in a mixture of yelling at Arachnid to stay away from her sister, while also begging to do her first, but Arachnid didn't seem to notice. She was ready to plunge her clawed finger right through Euphemia's head, when suddenly, a ground bridge portal had opened behind Arachnid, who couldn't react in time to the sudden arrival of the Lancelot that dealt a spinning kick to Arachnid's face and sent her crashing to the wall on the other side of the cave. She didn't even get time to recover as Dreadwing pressed his foot against her chest to pin her to the floor as he kept his cannon aimed directly at her face. "Give me a reason." Dreadwing glared with as much hate as he could muster. "Just one." "Euphy!" Suzaku exclaimed as the Lancelot pulled both the ensnared Euphy and Cornelia from the suspended states before setting them gently down on the ground. He quickly jumped out of the cockpit before rushing to pry the web off them both, despite the pain it caused as he pulled some of it off their skin, specifically their face area as it covered their mouths. Once they were both free, Euphy wasted no time in wrapping her arms around Suzaku and pressing her lips against his as hard as she could, tears streaming from her eyes. Both Suzaku and Cornelia were completely stunned by this action, until Euphy broke it off and cried as she buried her face into his chest. "Suzaku," she cried. "I was so scared. I didn't want all this, I'm sorry." Suzaku returned the embrace as tears formed in his eyes as well. "I'm the one who should be apologizing. I was supposed to protect you, and I failed. Forgive me." Dreadwing took his eyes off Arachnid, while still keeping her pinned, to look with sympathy and relief at the pair. "I failed you as well, Euphy." Dreadwing apologize. "I hope you can forgive me." "No, you saved me, saved us." Euphy told them both as she tried to smile, tears still streaming down her face. Thank you, both of you, she continued to hold Suzaku as he held her close as well. Cornelia, while beyond relieved that her sister was no longer in danger, only felt disappointment in herself. Not only was she helpless to save her own sister, but both of their salvation came in the form of both Dreadwing and Suzaku, the later she heavily prejudiced against. But now, she was beginning to understand why Yuffie trusted him, trusted both of them. Kuru, Suzaku. Cornelia spoke, getting everyone's attention. And, you as well Dreadwing, you saved me, and my sister. She looked away slightly to try and hide the look of shame in her eyes. Thank you. Both Suzaku and Dreadwing looked at Cornelia with sympathetic expressions. Yuffie, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you but She was interrupted as Yuffie leapt at her older sister and hugged her with as much affection and emotion as she did Suzaku moments ago. I love you Cornelia. That won't ever change. I love you and I'm just glad you're okay. That was enough for the dam to beak with Cornelia as she hugged her sister back. I love you too, Yuffie. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. This scene was enough to make Dreadwing and Suzaku smile as they glanced at each other with relief that they made it here on time. However, the happy moment was brought to an end as Cornelia pulled away to wipe the tears from her eyes. Suzaku, listen. I know that Lelouch is zero. That took both him and Dreadwing by surprise, and before they could even question it, Cornelia continued to speak. You need to get in contact with him and Prime right now. This whole thing was a setup. What? Suzaku stuttered. She's right. Yuffie stood up. Megatron isn't even in Japan. He's at the homeland, oh no, look. She pointed to the screen that both Suzaku and Dreadwing apparently missed upon their arrival. Neither of them could believe what they were seeing with their own eyes. Not only have the military forces around the Pendragon Royal Palace been effectively wiped out, but the Nemesis had already obliterated the entire palace itself, leaving nothing more than smoke and flames where it once stood. We're too late. Yuffie already fell on her knees in despair. What is this? Dreadwing exclaimed. The massacre at the special zone, it was nothing more than a diversion. Cornelia revealed. Megatron purposely orchestrated it because he knew the Black Knights and Autobots would retaliate against it, creating a distraction to divert everyone's attention away from his true objective. With all the Knights of the Round in Area 11, it left the homeland completely vulnerable for Megatron to wipe out Pendragon. And, it seems he's already succeeded. Suzaku and Dreadwing looked at the screen in pure horror before rage filled both their being, especially Suzaku as he pounded his fist into the ground. All this time, that's what he was planning. Suzaku yelled in fury, causing Yuffie to look in startle, never having seen Suzaku like this. All the people who died at the zone, everyone who's dying now, it was just a distraction. Dreadwing's pain-induced screams suddenly got all their attention as they turned back in shock to see Dreadwing fall back, holding one hand over his lower ab area where Arachnid had stabbed him with her spider legs as she pulled herself back up. You really should have killed me when you had the chance, Dreadwing. Arachnid taunted. Looks like Suzaku's rubbed off on you. Suzaku and Cornelia glared hatefully at her as they both stood protectively in front of the frightened Euphemia. And if I were you, I'd be less concerned about your friends, and more about yourselves, because none of you are leaving here alive. As she said those words, she reached out with her telepathic connection, deeper underground and into the island, all the way down to the hive where the remainder of the Insecticons, those who weren't at Pendragon or Ashford anyway, remained in slumber in their pods. Until Arachnid had awakened them with her telepathic message. Arise, my armada, and attack. Arachnid shouted. Less than a second later, the entire cave began to shake as the first to emerge around the recovering Dreadwing and his three human compatriots, were the smaller Insecticon swarmers and spitters. We must leave. Now. Dreadwing exclaimed as Suzaku quickly got back into the Lancelot, with Cornelia and Euphemia squeezing into the cockpit behind him right as it closed and powered back on. The Lancelot and Dreadwing both turned toward the exit and shot their way out as fast as they could with Arachnid giving pursuit alongside a growing horde of Insecticon swarmers, spitters, and even bruisers. Do not allow them to escape. Arachnid ordered. Leave their blood and energon spilled across this island. Tokyo settlement, front lines. For the glory of Megatron. Jeremiah shouted as the Siegfried brought its arms down toward Ironhide, who quickly transformed and shot underneath the legs and behind the Siegfried just before the crushing blow shook the ground. Ironhide then transformed back and opened fire onto the Siegfried's back with his energon cannons, which did appear to cause some damage, while also irritating Jeremiah enough to turn around and attack Ironhide, who ran backwards while still firing his cannons to keep the metallic behemoth at bay. At the same time, Wheeljack ran and swerved from left to right to avoid the Mordred's Varus blasts before jumping up toward the broken ledge of a ruined building and leapt up from that to get to the roof faster than Marianne could react. By the time she noticed, Wheeljack had shot himself straight down toward her, landing a solid punch into the Mordred's head and sending it crashing down toward the ground. Wheeljack landed right in front of it and quickly drew his swords again with the intent on slicing it apart, but Marianne quickly activated the float system on the Mordred and rammed it into Wheeljack to send him rolling across the ground before she took to the air. "You Autobots are ruining everything we've worked so hard for," Marianne practically screamed in her thoughts as a look of anger fell upon the possessed Anya's face. "Even threatening to take my children from me. And for that, you will pay." Suddenly, the Mordred was shot from all sides by multiple Barai units, personally led by Ogi. "Open fire. Don't give her an inch," Ogi exclaimed as they continued to shoot, forcing Marianne to activate her blaze luminous systems to keep herself from being shot down, but the Mordred had already sustained pretty significant damage. At the same time, the Siegfried was pelted by multiple explosions all around its sides as the same heavily armed wrecker beret from the military depot all rolled onto the scene. "Eat hot missiles," Tamaki shouted as he and another unit kept Ironhide covered. "Ogi, aren't you supposed to be on the front lines?" Ironhide exclaimed as he got back up. "The enemy forces have mostly been driven back. I came to provide backup," Ogi stated as he and his unit had the Mordred thoroughly surrounded and kept the fire up, practically emptying their guns to keep the Mordred in place. Wheeljack looked and saw the Siegfried in the same kind of position as Tamaki, and his group of Wrecker Beret fired missiles all around the behemoth, while moving around in a circular motion in order to keep it pinned. The White Wrecker soon got an idea. "Hey old timer, let's switch things up." "Good call." Ironhide nodded as he and Wheeljack ran past each other to switch opponents. As Ogi and his squad continued to open fire on the Mordred from all sides, the Blaze Luminous system was nearing its limit as Marianne couldn't even find the chance to move. This gave Ironhide the opportunity he needed to charge his energon cannons to maximum power and fire. The two large energon spheres came in practically in slow motion and scored a direct hit, creating an explosion that all but shattered the Mordred's shields and sent it crashing into a small building, which Ironhide fired at all around, causing it to collapse all over the Mordred, rendering it inoperable and preventing it from moving. "No, no, no, no," Marianne exclaimed as she was unable to get the Mordred back up. "They can't do this. She's down. Should we finish her off?" Ogi asked. "No," Ironhide said firmly. "She might be knight of the round, but she's still a kid. And we don't kill kids." "Right," Ogi nodded as they turned around to walk away from a furious Marianne. Though Ironhide paid one more glance to the downed Mordred. "But there is definitely something going on with her. Is this another Geass thing?" Ironhide wondered. "I'll ask CC about it later. Right now, we got a battle to win." At the same time, Wheeljack began to climb up a tall building as he addressed Tamaki and his squad. "Hey, fire at his legs, bring him down to his knees." "You got it." Tamaki nodded. "You all heard the man, get this bastard down on his knees." He and every single Wrecker Nightmare concentrated their firepower directly on the legs of the Siegfried. The resulting explosions from the barrage of missiles all but destroyed the lower leg areas, forcing the Siegfried down on its knees. "You pests!" the cyborg Jeremiah exclaimed, just as Wheeljack made it to top of the building, just above the Siegfried before leaping over it. Jeremiah noticed Wheeljack falling toward him as he desperately tried to throw out his right arm, only for it to explode as Tamaki shot at it with another couple of missiles. Wheeljack flew out of the smoke and fire, blades crossed forward as he sliced past the Siegfried's neck, landing behind it just as the head unit rolled off. The resulting shock caused Jeremiah to scream as he felt the sensation himself, due to the nightmare being plugged into his nervous system before the entire Siegfried fell over, completely disabled. "Nice going," Wheeljack smirked to Tamaki and his squad. "You too." Tamaki nodded. "No time to celebrate just yet," Ironhide stated as he, Ogi, and the remaining beret came in. "We keep pushing forward." Ironhide's right. This battle isn't over yet. Ogie agreed. Then what are we waiting for? Wheeljack's smirk only grew. Time to wreck M. He and Ironhide both transformed as they drove alongside Ogie and Tamaki's squadrons to get back up to the front lines and finish off this fight. Ashford Academy. Bumblebee ran straight for Hardshell, firing his energon blasters at him before coming in close to deliver multiple punches, then striking him in the jaw with a cartwheel kick to send him realigned toward Ratchet, who sliced at his face with his blades, but Hardshell recovered quickly enough to grab Ratchet by his head and slam him into Bumblebee before throwing him away. Monica's Florence flew in from behind to slash at him with her MVS claw from her Nightmare's remaining arm, but when she tried to slash at him again, Hardshell caught the weapon before crushing the entire arm in his hand before delivering a powerful uppercut slash with his claws to slice apart the front face of the Florence, forcing Monica to eject out of it to avoid getting sliced up herself. Hardshell was pelted in the back by the ammunition from Cecile Sutherland's rifle, prompting the Insecticon to turn around and rush her. As Cecile attempted to pull her Sutherland back, Hardshell proved too fast for his enormous size and quickly grabbed both the Sutherland's arms in his hands and held it up in a T-like formation as he glared into the Nightmare, causing Cecile to look in clear terror. "You are no warrior." Hardshell scowled before he ripped the Nightmare apart. Thankfully, Cecile had already ejected in time to avoid getting torn apart. Ratchet quickly rushed Hardshell and tried to strike his blowtorch into his side, which did cause Hardshell to roar in pain. But it irritated him even more as he grabbed Ratchet again before leaping high into the air to slam the Autobot medic hard onto the ground before kicking him even further away. Bumblebee then tried to leap on top of him and shoot his energon blasters into Hardshell's face, but the Insecticon reached back to grab B and pull him off before punching him in the gut so hard that it caused a small shockwave. Hardshell repeated the process twice before throwing Bumblebee to send him crashing into Ratchet, leaving the two Autobots beaten and barely able to move. "Bumblebee," Ratchet groaned as he tried to pull himself up, but failed. "I'm sorry. We're not out of this yet, Doc," B tried to say, but couldn't find the strength to pull himself up as Hardshell loomed closer, punching his fist into his palm for emphasis while growling in anticipation. "Come on, get up," Monica exclaimed as she and Cecile ran toward the two downed Autobots. "Transform and let's get out of here." "Can't, too much damage," Ratchet stuttered as he tried to roll over and back up. "Get the children and leave." "But, we can't just leave you, Cecile stuttered but gasped once they saw Hardshell was already over all four of them. Cecile had honestly never been more terrified in her life as Monica tried to stand protectively in front of her, as well as the two downed Autobots, despite being quite terrified herself. "Your lives will now belong to Lord Megatron." Hardshell was ready to execute all four of them right then and there when suddenly a ground bridge portal opened up on his right, a mere 2 feet away, much to the surprise of Hardshell, the two downed Autobots, and two Britannian women. But that wasn't the only surprise. Coming in from the far left side was the at full speed Ganymede, with the nuclear reactor still hooked on. "Get away from them, you monster!" Shirley screamed in fury as she was in the pilot seat before pulling on the ejection lever to shoot her seat into the air just as the rigged Ganymede crashed into Hardshell, the impact sending them both into the ground bridge portal, which closed shortly after. "What?" Ratchet exclaimed as everyone else looked in surprise. "Shirley, what did Nina do it?" Shirley called out as her seat landed hard on the ground, shaking her up a bit, but that wasn't her concern at the moment as she saw Nina, Millie, Rivals, Lloyd, as well as Arthur, all catch up to her, the trigger still in Nina's hand. With a serious expression on her face, Nina pressed the button on the trigger. A ground bridge portal had opened up in Earth's orbit, several miles above the surface, with Hardshell and the rigged Ganymede flying out of it and sent hurtling through the void of space. Hardshell tried to regain his senses, but as he saw what was hooked onto the empty Nightmare, he gave a shrill insect-like scream in horror just as the reactor detonated. Boom! The nuclear explosion completely engulfed Hardshell. And even though the damage would have been devastating on land, the fact that it was damaged high enough in Earth's orbit was enough to ensure that no part of the Earth would be adversely affected by either the blast or the resulting radiation. What just happened? Bumblebee bleeped in confusion as he and Ratchet attempted to pull themselves up. "Lloyd, what was that?" Cecile asked as they all regrouped. Oh, not much, just a prototype nuclear reactor rigged to a nightmare for a makeshift bomb. Lloyd said casually, much to Cecile, Monica, Ratchet, and Bee's shock. Nuclear. Monica and Ratchet exclaimed simultaneously. Fix it. Shirley made contact with the Ark. Did it work? Affirmative. The mini-con confirmed. Both the Insecticon and the reactor had been successfully bridged into Earth's orbit, and the detonation had occurred. Thankfully, no other lifeforms should be charmed, alarmed, harmed. Shirley gave a slight giggle at Fix-It, stuttering before sighing in relief. Thanks for your help, Fix-It. She hung up as she turned to the rest of her friends, be they human or Autobot. You rigged a nuclear reactor to a nightmare, and opened a ground bridge to relocate it in hardshell to another point where the detonation wouldn't harm anyone. Ratchet asked, just making sure he got all that correct. Well, I had a little help. Shirley admitted. Our little scientist here was the one who rigged reactor. Lloyd said as he ruffled Nina's hair almost like a proud dad. The rest of the kids helped me to tinker the gamine to make sure it did the job. All in all, I'd call this a success, albeit a tad overkill. That's an understatement. Monica winced. But, thank you. She was caught by surprise when Shirley hugged her. I'm just glad we're all okay. Shirley said with relief. That makes two of us. Millie agreed in an equally relieved tone. 3. Rival said as he sat down on his rear. I love action as much of the next guy, but that was a bit too much. Not bad kids, not bad. Bumblebee bleeped with a sense of pride as he helped Ratchet to stand up. Military Depot. Bulkhead and Breakdown charged at each other yet again, clashing their respective mace and hammer together to create a powerful shockwave that shook up the entire area. Breakdown pressed on by slamming his elbow into Bulkhead's face before swinging his hammer at him to knock him down. Bulkhead attempted to recover, but Breakdown had already jumped into the air to slam his foot hard onto Bulkhead's face and drive him into the ground. Bulkhead! Rai exclaimed in shock as he tried to drive his Gekka in to help him, only for the Palamedes to slam into him on the side and knock him back, forcing Rai to back away as he tried to draw his Nightmare's katana, which was quickly shot out of his hand and destroyed by Dorothea's Palamedes' gun arm. You'd better worry about yourself, Kaiserin. Dorothea glared. I will bring you back to the Emperor if it's the last thing I do. She charged her Nightmare at him, forcing Rai on the defensive with his Gekka. Nonette had attempted to drive her Galician out to assist him, but her entire Nightmare suddenly short-circuited as Knockout had suddenly jammed his electric prod into the back waist area of the Galician, causing it to fall onto the ground. Did you forget who helped to upgrade your little Nightmare? Knockout teased. All in all, it's pretty much a carbon copy of the Lancelot with a few minor differences, and I've spent quite a lot of time tinkering with that work of art. Nonette desperately tried to pull her Nightmare up, but it seemed all but inoperable as Knockout loomed over it with his buzz saw out and ready to kill. I think it's time to peel back the layers. No! Rai exclaimed in shock, which was enough of a distraction for the Palamedes to knock down his Gekka and pin it to the ground, one foot on its chest, the other stomped hard on the Radiant Wave Surger, hard enough to apparently render it inoperable. What did I just tell you? Dorothea told him. Watch closely as your so-called friends are wiped away. You shouldn't even mourn them. You're a Britannian prince, you belong to our emperor, not to them. No, 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 no. Rai practically screamed as he tried to get his Nightmare up, to no apparent avail as he could only watch as Breakdown kept Bulkhead pinned to the ground and relentlessly pummeled him, while Knockout was already, slowly, cutting into the Galician's chest area just above the cockpit where Nonette was. He couldn't believe it. Was Rai really about to lose them? His partner and friend who had finally come back to help him. He already lost his mother, sister, and his whole home before, just how much more was he going to lose? No, he was not going to lose anything else. Britannia already took away everything from him before. It was not going to happen again. Finding the resolve, the Geass sigil in both his eyes flared brightly as he let his adrenaline kick into overdrive. Rai activated the Surger Claw. Despite being damaged, it was still functional enough to begin overheating the leg of the Palamedes that kept it pinned, much to Dorothea's shock. What? This shock was enough for Rai to roar as he used his newfound strength, along with the weakening structure of the enemy Nightmare, to rush his claw up like a slice and completely slice through the left half of the Palamedes, its left leg having been obliterated with its left arm completely severed. Dorothea herself was still alive, as the claws themselves just barely grazed through her cockpit. The resulting force sent both halves flying in opposite directions. Knockout was caught off guard by this sudden action, leaving him open for Rai to rush him, the Geass coming in at full speed, decking Knockout and sending him tumbling into the ruins of a depot before he finally came toward Breakdown, who readied his hammer. "You wanna go, kid? Let's go." Breakdown challenged as he got off Bulkhead and rushed toward the charging Geass, both him and Rai roaring at the top of their lungs. Activating the damaged Radiant Wave Surger again, this time at maximum level, and clenching his claws like a fist. Rai threw the Surger claw out like a punch just as Breakdown thrusted his hammer at the Geass. Both hits struck at the same time, with Rai's attack being only a second sooner, but that made all the difference. Right before Breakdown's hammer could even graze the Geass, Rai's clawed Surger attack had struck Breakdown's face, causing a powerful explosion that shook the entire depot as if it were just struck by a sudden earthquake. The Geass was sent flying and skidding across the ground from the force of the explosion. When it came to a stop, it was barely even functional as the arm that had the Radiant Wave Surger was completely gone, the rest of it looked ready to fall apart any second. When the smoke cleared, both Bulkhead and Nonet looked in clear shock to see the body of Breakdown, with his head and most of his upper shoulders, completely gone. The deceased Decepticon then fell on its knees before falling flat on the ground. Breakdown was dead. With the enemy apparently dealt with, Bulkhead got up on his feet as quick as he could as he ran, or rather limped, closer toward the Geass, with Nonet pulling herself out of the Galatian's cockpit as well. "Rai!" Bulkhead exclaimed as he was the first one there and already began to use his strength to pry the wrecked Geass open and pull out the unconscious pilot as he lowered him down into his palm to let Nonet assess his condition. Nonet gave a gasp once he saw the shape he was in. Blood covered the right side of his face, his right arm appeared to be broken, with his right leg being fractured as well. She quickly felt his neck for a pulse, thankfully there was one, causing her to sigh in relief. "He's okay, he'll be fine," she said, much to Bulkhead's relief. "You take Wrecker style to the extreme, you know that right, kid?" Bulkhead joked to try and defuse the situation, which seemed to stir Rai back to consciousness as his eyes opened. "Hey guys, you okay?" "Yeah, we're fine, both of us," Nonet assured as tears of joy were slowly forming in her eyes. "Don't worry, we'll get you fixed up," Bulkhead also said with a smile of his own. I'll protect you and everyone," Rai stuttered. "I won't lose family again." This was enough for Bulkhead to give a sad smile, as he would have cried as well if he had tear ducts. But Nonet was already crying as she pulled the injured Rai into a welcoming and comforting embrace. Power Station. RC and the Gurren were back to back against the remaining two Valkyrie Vincents as they both tried to fly in and skewer the pair, but they were planned for this. RC got into the Gurren's Surger claw as Colin threw her into the air to land on one of the Vincents just as Colin ducked the Gurren underneath the sword slice of the second before reaching out with the Surger claw to grab the foot and activated the Radiant Wave Surger, causing the leg, and rest of the Nightmare, to overload with radiation before it exploded. At the same time, RC had used her arm blade to slice at the float system of the only remaining Vincent and sent it falling into an electric generator. RC jumped off just in time to watch the entire thing explode in glorious fashion. However, the pair did not have time to celebrate as a series of missiles had impacted the upper wall of the building near them, causing a cluster of rubble to fall onto the pair and trap both the Gurren and RC underneath. "Congrats on dispensing the pawns, but can you handle the king?" Luciano mocked as he hovered over them in the Percival, quickly bringing up his shield to block the sword strike from the flying Tristian. "I can," Gino exclaimed as he swung the Tristian's blade at Luciano again, only for Luciano to strike with his drill and break apart the only remaining sword before thrusting again into the Tristian's left shoulder, as well as that area of the float system, causing the Tristian to tumble to the ground. Suddenly, the Percival was pulled toward the ground, courtesy of Cliffjumper, who had leapt up to grab the Nightmare by the leg before falling back down to slam the Percival on the ground as he faced it himself. "How about you fight someone more down to earth? Mono y mono?" Cliff challenged with a smirk as he rushed the Percival to deck it across the face before delivering a kick to its chest and another punch onto its crown, followed by a knee to its gut. Luciano tried to flash the shield out and fire more missiles, but Cliffjumper pried the shield off the Nightmare's arm right as Luciano thrusted his drill weapon again, which Cliff blocked using his newly acquired shield. Sorry, shield beats drill. But now I've got you right where I want you. Luciano smirked as the top horn on the Percival's head pointed downward, before firing his secret Harken, piercing right through Cliff's throat, much to his shock, as well as his partners and Gino. Cliff! RC exclaimed in shock, before desperately trying to pull herself out of the rubble with Colin trying to do the same with her Gurren. Come on. Damn you. Move. However, Colin's thoughts were interrupted by a pain-induced scream and the sound of metal piercing metal as she and RC looked in horror to see Luciano's drill pierce through Cliffjumper's chest. Luciano smirked in sadistic fashion as he saw energon leaking down from the wounds he inflicted on his enemy. Now I finally know the color of your blood. Red's always been my personal favorite, but blue brings a certain amount of fresh air, don't you think? Cliffjumper tried to speak, but with his throat appearing pierced, it almost sounded like a pained gasp. Oh, what's the matter, Mr. Chatterbox? Nothing to say. Luciano laughed. However, Cliffjumper glanced behind the Percival as he saw a small pit right behind it, with a still working electric generator right at the bottom. This was enough for the red Autobot to smirk. Well, looks like this is it for me. I had a good run. He thought to himself as he reached out with his arms to pull the Percival into a bear hug, driving the drill even deeper into him, but it was a movement that nobody saw coming, especially Luciano. What? He questioned as his smirk faded. Question? Cliffjumper spoke in gasps, still maintaining his grin. What does the super cool, good-looking, conversationist named Cliffjumper value most? Answer: the lives of his friends, more than even his own. Why are you still talking? Why can't you just shut up and die? Luciano exclaimed in a crazed state. Too bad, Cliff remarked. Cause I'm gonna chat, your ears out, all the way the hell. He then pushed himself and the Percival into the hole where the generator resided. It all appeared to be slow motion as Cliffjumper paid one final glance towards RC and Colin, still inside her Gurren. Even though he saw the horror-struck face on RC, he couldn't see Colin's in the nightmare, but he could tell it was probably the same thing. Despite that, he maintained a content smile on his face. Sorry, but it looks it's my time, you're gonna have to carry the rest of the team without me. Tell the others I'm looking out for them. I got no regrets, I'll be sure to tell Tailgate and Naoto you guys said hi. This was most fun I'd ever had. Right before he fell, Cliffjumper spoke the final 4 words to come from his mouth, as well as from the bottom of his spark. I love you guys. With that, the Percival was the first to land into the generator, with Cliffjumper right on top of it. Electricity surged through the Nightmare and Autobot alike as an explosive chain reaction was triggered. No, I lost. Luciano exclaimed in disbelief and horror. My life is taken. By a filthy Autobot. The last thing the Vampire of Britannia would ever see, through the screen of his nightmare, was the trolling face of the Autobot named Cliffjumper who bested him, before the resulting explosion claimed both their lives. Cliffjumper. RC and Colin both screamed at the same time as they saw the flames rise from the hole. Even Gino's pupils shrank as he looked in genuine shock as well. Colin immediately opened the cockpit of the Gurren and ran out toward the hole, just as RC was able to squeeze herself out and try and catch up to her. Colin looked down into the pit, where she saw the burning remains of both the enemy Nightmare, as well as her friend. She even saw the deceased face of Cliffjumper, as he still carried a grin. Colin fell to her knees as tears were already flowing down her eyes. Her memory recalled the first time she met Cliffjumper and the other Autobots, and all the times they fought together. All the jokes, all the times that he genuinely comforted her and treated her with respect and compassion, the way he always had her back. Now, he was gone. It was almost like losing Naoto all over again. Cliff, she muttered before she felt a large but gentle touch on her back, and glanced upward to see it was RC, kneeling down to her level as she had a devastated, yet sympathetic look in her eyes, indicating she was going through the exact same thing. That was enough for Colin to wrap her arms around one of RC's legs and cry her eyes out, prompting RC to press a little more, embracing Colin as best as she could without crushing her as she did her best to comfort her, while at the same time, mourning the loss of her own partner as well. Gino stepped out of the cockpit of his Tristian as he slowly walked toward the pair but stopped before he got too close. He may have known Cliffjumper on the battlefield as an enemy, but from the beginning, he could tell he was a decent guy. If they were on the same side, they could have easily become friends. Cliffjumper did not deserve to go out like this, but at least he died protecting those he cared for, and that was worth something. RC noticed Gino and paid him a small glance, not necessarily a glare, but one that was still somewhat weary as she continued to comfort the sobbing Colin. "I'm sorry." That was all he said, it was really all he could say. But even so, RC could tell that he meant it, causing her to nod in acknowledgement. The Ark. Fix-It gave a gasp as he saw one of the lights flicker out on the radar. "No, please don't tell me." "Fix-It?" Nunnally asked in concern as Sayoko wheeled her closer, with Kagaya and Chigusa right beside her. "Is something wrong?" The orange mini-con had a somber look on his face, one that the other three recognized as it silently told them something bad had happened. Cliffjumper's life signal just went offline. "What does that mean?" Chigusa asked, though a part of her already had a good idea. "He's gone, isn't he?" Kagaya asked. "Yes." Fix-It replied gravely. Nunnally gasped once she heard that. She only met Cliffjumper a few times, the first being at the school festival. She didn't know him on a personal level, but she knew he was the one of the ones who looked out for both Colin and Lelouch and was particularly close to Colin. Knowing that someone dear to them was gone was enough for the disabled girl to start crying, prompting Sayoko to place a comforting hand on her shoulder, with Chigusa doing the same. Even Kagaya reached out to hold Nunnally's hand in her own form of comfort as well. Fix-It looked toward the radar screen where the rest of their forces were doing battle and appeared to be on the cusp of victory. "Rest well within the well of all sparks, Cliffjumper." Fix-It thought as his resolve became steeled. "Your sacrifice will not be in vain. I promise." Royal Palace. A wall was broken apart on the outside as Optimus was sent rolling backwards before flipping and skidding to a halt on his feet. The fight against Bismarck had taken them both back outside, specifically underneath a set of bridges and roadways that led directly into the palace, with the sewer systems just below them. Optimus didn't have time to assess much of the area as the Galahad rolled out in pursuit, forcing Optimus to transform and gain some distance as he couldn't attack with Bismarck's Geass still active. "Don't you dare run from me!" Bismarck exclaimed as he chased the Prime. "This is a duel to the death. I won't allow you to dishonor it by retreating." But Optimus wasn't retreating, he was only using this time to try and assess his opponent's power. Bismarck's Geass allows him to see into the future, but how far into the future? It can't be too far, probably by only a few seconds, otherwise he'd likely see multiple timelines unfolding on him at once, and I don't believe a Geass can be that powerful. But I don't know if I can determine his exact time limit, instead, I'll use his own ability against him. Optimus transformed back into his Cybertronian mode as he primed his ion cannon, but rather than aim at the Galahad, he aimed straight up toward the bridges above him and opened fire. His Geass lets him see into the future, but what if he's unable to see at all? Rubble from the collapsing began to fall all around the Galahad, but the large nightmare appeared to avoid all of them with relative ease. "You are a fool, Optimus Prime," Bismarck stated. "You think to overpower my Geass with multiple projectiles." He could see where every single piece of rubble was about to land and wasn't so much as scratched. However, this was exactly what Optimus wanted as he transformed into his vehicle mode again. With Bismarck's gaze briefly diverted from him, Optimus took advantage of this as he drove at high speeds all around the collapsing debris, adding to the growing dust cloud as he skidded donuts around the Galahad, creating an even larger dust cloud that further obscured Bismarck's view. When it was all done, all Bismarck could see was dust and smoke. Even with his Geass, he could only see the relative future of the dust clouds in front of him. "Where you? Show yourself," Bismarck called out to his enemy, only for a large force to impact him from behind and send him rolling across the ground. But he didn't have time to get back up as the same force pulled him back up and punched the Galahad in the face to knock it flat on its back. "Your Geass lets you see a short time frame into the future." Optimus' voice echoed around the area as the Galahad was back up. "But it must be difficult when your future is full of smoke and mirrors." Bismarck's eyes widened in horror as he realized what Optimus had done. He wasn't trying to crush me. His intent was to create a smokescreen so I couldn't see. Optimus then appeared from behind as he brought down his axe to sever the Galahad's right arm, the arm that carried the massive sword in it, right as the dust cloud began to clear. Even though Bismarck could now see Optimus, it was already too late as Optimus swung his axe horizontally to slice the entire Galahad in half, just below the cockpit. The force knocked the severed halves of the Galahad down into a nearby pit, where the Knight of One fell into the sewer systems below. "No. I lost. I failed you, Your Highness," Bismarck muttered in disbelief as he landed hard in the sewer steam, the contaminated water already beginning to flood the severed halves of his nightmare. Though Bismarck was still very much alive, he glanced up to Optimus in pure awe and disbelief. This is the power of Optimus Prime. Optimus could easily finish off Bismarck if he wanted to, but he might serve better as a prisoner. If he was a contractor of VV, he could have some vital information for them about the contractor, not to mention the Emperor as he was also the Knight of One. Optimus. He glanced up as he heard Todo's voice and saw the custom Gekka owned by Todo, along with those by the Four Holy Swords, all over the edge of the broken bridge, looking down toward Optimus. All enemy forces around the palace have been neutralized. The palace is taken. Well done, Todo. All of you. Optimus congratulated them. Oh please, it was no effort at all. Urabe smirked. I'm just upset we missed your show. Don't get too confident. A new voice spoke up as they all looked further up to see the Gawain slowly descending from the air. 0. Chiba acknowledged. Cornelia isn't here, Lelouch revealed, much to everyone's shock, even Optimus. What? Senba questioned. Are you sure? Asahina also asked. I'm sure, Lelouch said, a serious and grave expression on his face. In fact, her knights are under the assumption that we have captured her. But we don't have her, Asahina stated. I know, and that's what troubles me, Lelouch said as his eyes narrowed. I think we're being set up. Kaname Island. The Lancelot and Dreadwing backed up as they fired their respective Varus and Energon cannon into the horde of Insecticons that swarmed the floor, walls, and ceiling of the entire tunnel, but it seemed the equivalent of fighting back a raging river. Just how many of these things are there? Suzaku exclaimed as Cornelia and Yuffie were still behind him in the Lancelot's cockpit. Suddenly, the ground below them began to cave as a massive Insecticon bruiser emerged from the ground, one that was equivalent in size to the likes of Hardshell, as it snapped its pincers around Dreadwing and the Lancelot, pulling them both underground. Dreadwing quickly drew his sword and impaled it in the face while Suzaku fired the Lancelot's Harkins, point blank to sever its pincers and legs. Both attacks killed it as the ground caved even further, causing them all to fall deeper underground till they landed in a large chamber filled with Energon crystals. Where are we? Yuffie asked as the Lancelot and Dreadwing recovered. It's an Energon deposit, Dreadwing observed. This must have been how the Insecticons have survived for so long. Cornelia suddenly got an idea, actually drawing it from the skirmish at Port Yokosuka. Dreadwing, what were to happen if all this Energon detonated at once? Dreadwing saw where she was going as he pulled out one of his trademark bombs. There is enough Energon here, that should it explode, it will cause the entire cavern to collapse and likely crush Arachnid and her horde. Alright, let's do it, Suzaku said as he scanned the Lancelot to locate another tunnel. It looks like this might lead us back to the surface. Then go, Dreadwing told him. I will set the bomb. What? Dreadwing, what are you saying? Yuffie questioned in worry. No, I'm not leaving you here, Suzaku exclaimed. You are not leaving me, Dreadwing replied firmly. I have to set the bomb, but once I do, I'll follow you out. Suzaku, rescuing and protecting Yuffie and Cornelia is our mission and personal priority. You have to get them out of here before that wretch and her Insecticons come here, it won't be long before they find us. I'll be right behind you. He's right, Cornelia told Suzaku and Yuffie, much to their shock. I don't like the idea either. But without any more nightmares, the rest of us are a liability. Go. I won't be long, Dreadwing assured. Suzaku wanted to stay with Dreadwing and make sure they all made it out, but at the same time, he knew his mission was to protect Yuffie and Cornelia, and he had to see that through. He knew Dreadwing could take care of himself. Alright, but don't take too long, Suzaku said as he turned the Lancelot around and gunned straight for a tunnel that began to curve upward that would lead him and his passengers to the surface. Dreadwing quickly got to work as he set the bomb on an Energon crystal and linked it to his detonator. He was about to transform, when he felt a sudden pain in his side that prevented him from transforming as he held the wound where Arachnid stabbed him. That wretch! Dreadwing cursed, knowing that Arachnid probably stabbed him there to impair his T-cog. It was almost ironic that his T-cog would fail him twice in the same location. He then began to hear the sound of the swarming Insecticons coming closer and closer. He looked at the bomb and detonator and knew he couldn't leave like this. If Arachnid got here, she would easily disable the bomb and follow them to the surface. With a reluctant sigh, Dreadwing knew what he had to do as he drew his Energon blaster one final time. The Lancelot shot out of the hole and into the open surface of Kaname Island, the starry sky hanging above them. "We made it!" Yuffie exclaimed with relief. "Dreadwing, are you there? We made it out." Suzaku tried to make contact, but he got no response, much to his concern, as well as that of Cornelia and Yuffie. "Dreadwing. Suzaku, Yuffie, Cornelia, listen to me." Dreadwing made contact as they heard the sound of Energon fire on the other line. "I've made many mistakes in my life, and I regret a great deal. But, I do not regret meeting any of you." "Dreadwing, what are you?" Suzaku asked with worry. "My T-cog is damaged, I can't transform." Dreadwing revealed, much to the trio's shock. "And the Insecticons are already here. I can't allow them to escape. With a force like this under Megatron's control, who knows what he can do." They heard him grunt in pain as well as the screeching sounds of the Insecticons. "Hang on, I'm coming to help," Suzaku stated. "No, you must protect Yuffie and Cornelia," Dreadwing told him. Suzaku grunted as he opened his cockpit. "Yuffie, take your sister and go." "But Suzaku," Yuffie tried to protest. "You can't help me," Dreadwing exclaimed. "I am not leaving you," Suzaku practically screamed. "Please, just listen to me, all three of you." Dreadwing unloaded with his Energon cannon, firing at every single Insecticon that crawled out of the hole and wall, guarding the bomb he placed on the Energon crystal behind him. "Cornelia Lee Britannia, you and I may not have agreed on everything. But you are an honorable warrior, who cares deeply for your comrades as well as your family. I am proud to have fought beside you." As he spoke, an Insecticon bruiser emerged from the ground below him to clamp onto his cannon and crush it, forcing Dreadwing to discard it as he took up his blade to decapitate said bruiser before engaging the growing number of Insecticons in close combat. "Yuffie, you are a kind soul, one who wishes for all people to lead happy lives, regardless of their differences." Dreadwing continued as he sliced at every Insecticon that came his way, with the spitters already spitting acid-like projectiles on his body, but he pushed through as he sliced them down. "Continue to strive for the peaceful future you wish for, and don't ever let go of that kind heart you hold deep inside." Dreadwing thrusted his sword through 4 Insecticon swarmers at once, but a strand of webbing was shot to knock the sword out of his hands and onto the ground. He glared at the smirking Arachnid as the Insecticons continued to swarm him, and he tried to fight them off with his bare hands. "Suzaku Kururugi, you are my brother. You have your flaws, but I wouldn't trade you for any other." Dreadwing continued as the Insecticons began to overwhelm him and pin him to the ground. "You wish to atone for your past sins, be sure that you do, by living for the sake of those you care for. For your friends' sakes, for your loved ones' sakes, don't abandon them, not now, not ever." Arachnid smirked in victory, however, as she saw Dreadwing fall, she gasped in horror once she saw his bomb. She turned around and tried to climb back up the tunnel she came in as fast as she could. "Thank you, all of you, for showing me light." "No, Dreadwing," Suzaku turned the Lancelot around desperately, despite the cockpit still being open with Cornelia and Yuffie still inside as well. "Dreadwing." He tried to get back down the tunnel, but it was already too late. "Goodbye," Dreadwing muttered as his body was almost completely covered by the Insecticons, right as he pressed the detonator. Boom! Asterisk. A massive blue explosion encompassed the whole cave, obliterating Dreadwing, and every Insecticon that had swarmed around him. Even the fleeing Arachnid was caught in the explosion as well. The resulting shockwave had sent the Lancelot flying back quite a ways away as the entire ground began to cave in, crushing and burying any other Insecticon that was in the tunnels below. Though the Lancelot landed hard on the ground away from the collapse zone, with Suzaku, Cornelia, and Yuffie rolling across the ground out of the cockpit, they were all safe as they pulled themselves up to look down the large crater where they saw the smoke clear to reveal all kinds of rubble and boulders lay at the bottom. There was little doubt anyone could have survived that. Though all three of them were safe, it was bittersweet as they all knew what they lost in order for this to happen. Dreadwing, no, not you, please no, no. Suzaku yelled as he fell on his knees, slamming his fists on the ground in frustration as tears flowed down his eyes. He then suddenly felt an embrace from behind and could tell right away that it was Yuffie, trying to comfort him as best she could, while also shedding tears as well to mourn the only Decepticon she truly considered a friend. Cornelia was also in a state of shock as she tried to rub the tears from her eyes as well. Despite their disagreements, she had nothing but respect for Dreadwing, not to mention he helped to save her life, as well as that of her sister. She would be forever grateful for that. But now was not the time to mourn. Yuffie, Suzaku, she got their attention. I'm sorry, truly I am, but we need to contact Lelouch right now and tell him what Megatron is doing. I promise we will mourn Dreadwing later, but he gave us a chance, let's not waste it. Suzaku and Yuffie both looked toward each other, and despite both of them wanting the time to mourn their friend, they both knew that Cornelia was right. Okay, Suzaku. Yuffie gestured to the Lancelot. Yeah, alright. Suzaku rubbed the tears out from his eyes as they made their way to the White Nightmare. But at the same time, as sadness set in, so too did rage and hatred as a dangerous look formed in his eyes. Megatron, I swear, that even if it's the last thing I do, you will pay for this. The Lancelot was stood upright as Suzaku sat back in the open cockpit, with Yuffie and Cornelia right behind him as made contact with his friend. Lelouch, Lelouch, are you there? Suzaku, I read you. Did you find Yuffie? Lelouch asked urgently on the other side of the line. I'm right here, Lelouch. I'm safe. Yuffie revealed herself. Cornelia's with me too. They all heard the enormous sigh of relief through the comms. Thank God. I'm so glad you're all okay. Not all of us. Suzaku reported gravely. Dreadwing, he sacrificed himself to give us a chance to escape. Suzaku, I'm so sorry. Lelouch, please listen to me. Cornelia began. This whole thing is a distraction. Megatron and the Decepticons are attacking Pendragon as we speak. What? It's true. Yuffie confirmed. We saw it all, the special zone, and the fight you're in right now, it's all just to sell the deception. Britannia is Megatron's true target. Even CC could not contain her surprise as she and Lelouch exchanged horrified glances. But, while they were still in shock, the rooftop to the royal palace began to open as a massive satellite dish-like transmitter appeared and projected a massive hologram into the night sky. This got the attention of not just Lelouch and CC, but also Optimus Prime, Toto, and the rest of the Four Holy Swords. Even Bismarck, who had escaped the destroyed Galahad, could see it as well. They all looked in genuine shock to see the massive and towering holographic form of the Decepticon leader himself. But it was not just them. The hologram was so massive, that the entire Tokyo settlement could see it. From all the Black Knights, Autobots, and surviving Britannians in the front lines including Ironhide, Ogi, Tamaki, Wheeljack, and even Marianne, still possessing Anya, as she had pulled herself out from the Mordred. The hologram could even be seen from the power station by RC, Colin, and Gino, and even at the military depot by Bulkhead, Nonette, and the recovering Rai, as well as Dorothea, who had emerged from the destroyed Palamedes. All of them could not contain their surprise as they saw this massive hologram. All except for Knockout, who had just pulled himself up and remained hiding in cover with a smirk on his face. Even at Ashford Academy, Bumblebee, Shirley, Ratchet, Monica, Cecile, Rivals, Nina, Millie, who was holding Arthur in her arms, and Lloyd all saw it. Well, there's something you don't see every day. Lloyd commented. That's Megatron, Shirley exclaimed in fright. What, in the name of the Allspark is going on? Ratchet stuttered. Attention humanity. Megatron's voice bellowed through the hologram so that everyone could hear it. I am Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, and the new master of planet Earth. You may all rejoice, for I have ended the life of the foolish and weak Charles Z. Britannia, and laid waste to capital city of Pendragon. Another hologram was shown beside that of Megatron, one that showed the burning remains of the capital palace, much to the genuine shock of everyone present, be they human or Cybertronian. As of this moment, the Holy Empire of Britannia no longer exists. Megatron continued. Everything that was owned and controlled by this pathetic excuse of a superpower now belongs to me. Every resource, every conquered nation, every single human under its care, be it man, woman, or child, all of it is now the property of the Decepticon cause. And this is only the beginning. Soon, all of Earth shall be assimilated into a new galactic order under my leadership. This message was not just shown in the Tokyo settlement, but even on every single television, computer, and phone screen across the entire nation of Japan. But not just Japan, all over the world, be they the other superpowers such as the EU or the Chinese Federation, but other smaller nations, be it areas of Britannia or independent. No longer shall the humans of Earth be plagued by the burdens of freedom and choice. Megatron continued. This may sound as a form of slavery, but I assure you, this is the beginning of a new and glorious era for your world. Your freedom and will to choose are the cause of all conflict on your planet, which has set the human race on a path of inevitable self-destruction. From the Chinese Federation, a small girl, who sat on a large throne, looked with shaky eyes and genuine terror. The only form of comfort she had was the gentle hand of a young man with long black hair as he glared at the image on the screen in front of them. While several robed men with makeup looked more intrigued than terrified. But I am here to save you. Megatron continued. You will only have one burden to carry, my will. It is the only guidance you shall require as I lead your race to a prosperous future. All I ask in return, is your complete and total submission. From the EU, a council of politics and generals watched the broadcast from a large screen of their own. Among them was a middle-aged man with grayish-green hair, beard, and mustache. Standing next to him was a young woman with long blonde hair and light purple eyes as she looked with worry and concern. The Holy Britannia Empire is already in the process of being completely uprooted. Megatron's speech continued to broadcast. I shall tear it down to its foundation and leave nothing left. All those who dare to resist the will of my cause, shall suffer the same fate, I assure you. From the tributary empire that was known as Euro-Britannia, a man with dark gray hair and a mustache sat on his throne to watch the broadcast with a hard glare, alongside 4 other men. One was a man with black hair and violet eyes, another was much younger with blonde hair and light blue eyes, the third was middle-aged with darker skin as well as brown hair and auburn eye color, and the final one was an elderly bald man with blue eyes and a long white beard. This is the dawn of a new age, an age far brighter than any golden age you could ever conceive of. Megatron's speech appeared to be nearing its conclusion. It was also being watched by the remaining heads of Kyoto, including Diethard, in an unknown location, alongside a young man with dark blonde hair and green eyes, standing next to a masked man wearing a flamboyant white and black suit with a red mask. The masked man and young man all glared along with Kirihara, while the rest of Kyoto looked in genuine shock and terror. Even Diethard felt something mixed in with the obvious psychopathic excitement, something he had never expected to feel before, fear. Welcome to the Platinum Age of the Decepticons. Embrace our new way of life, and reap its rewards. Or resist, and suffer the same fate as Britannia, as well as the Autobots and Black Knights. Megatron's speech came to a halt as Fixit, Kagaya, Chigusa, and Sayoko could not contain the terror-filled expressions that filled their eyes. Even Nunnally was terrified out of her mind as her fragile body continued to shake. No, the young girl thought and prayed as hard as she could. Please God no. Don't let this happen, please no. With that declaration, it would seem all the world came to a grinding halt, especially within the Tokyo settlement where all the fighting came to an end. The entire war zone that had engulfed the city had been rendered so silent, it was almost a ghost town. From the perspective of the Black Knights and the Autobots, they were on the cusp of total victory, only to find their hopes dashed as the Decepticons had achieved an even greater victory. But that silence gave into even more dread as a massive object came descending down from the clouds in the night sky. The enormous warship known as the Nemesis had arrived on the battlefield and was clearly visible for everyone to see. What the heck is that? Rivals practically screamed as he and all his classmates looked in clear fear, even Shirley, Monica, and Cecile were terrified. The Decepticon warship, Ratchet muttered in fear as Bumblebee's optics shook. Well, this can't be good, Lloyd commented. This can't be real, I refuse to believe it. Bartley exclaimed, almost as if he were having a panic attack. having seen Megatron's declaration on the screen of the Avalon's bridge. Britannia could not have fallen. It's impossible. It's very possible, because I helped to do it, Schneisel revealed casually, causing Bartley and the rest of the crew to turn around in clear shock. What? Bartley muttered. Don't act so surprised, General Bartley. Schneisel explained. Britannia's end is long overdue. Our nation has incited violence, bringing the Earth to the brink of destruction. Under the rule of the Decepticons, a much more powerful force, humanity can be pacified. Your Highness, why would? Bartley looked in total devastation, which turned into surprise as a small ground bridge portal opened up beside the White Prince, and the panther-like Mini-Con Ravage stepped out to walk next to Schneisel. I would strongly suggest we cooperate peacefully with our new leader, lest we suffer a gruesome fate. Schneisel said calmly, almost contradicting the snarls and growls from Ravage as the crew, especially Bartley, looked in fear. We were set up. Toto exclaimed as he, the Holy Swords, Optimus Prime, and the Zero all regrouped outside the palace. However, a ground bridge portal opened up directly behind the Gawain, much to the shock of Lelouch and CC before the portal encompassed the large black nightmare, just as the others turned around in shock. Lelouch. Optimus tried to run in and pull him out, but right when he got there, the portal had already closed, taking the Gawain, with Lelouch and CC inside, to who knows where. No! Optimus exclaimed. Optimus, we have company. Chiba shouted as multiple Seeker and other aerial Vehicons, including flying Insecticons, all flew down from the Nemesis to not only engage the team at the Royal Palace, but all the other Black Knight and Autobot forces throughout the settlement. Attack my armada! Starscream exclaimed as he led the charge once again. Demolish every Autobot, Black Knight, and Britannian soldier in sight. Destroy them all. Kaname Island. Suzaku continued to sit in the open cockpit of the Lancelot, along with Cornelia and Yuffie as they also saw Megatron's declaration from the Lancelot's monitor, so they already knew what had happened. Even though they already saw the palace at Pendragon fell from the monitors in Arachnid's lair, to hear the complete and total overthrow of Britannia from the words of someone like Megatron. Saying it was a horror show for them would be a gross understatement. This is a nightmare. It just has to be. Yuffie stuttered, not even trying to hide the terror in her voice. Before anyone else could say anything, a ground bridge portal suddenly opened up underneath the Lancelot, causing the White Nightmare to begin falling in. Acting on instinct, and sensing the immediate danger, Suzaku quickly pushed Yuffie and Cornelia out of the open cockpit as the Lancelot was already halfway through the portal. Both princesses rolled on the ground as Yuffie desperately tried to get up and help Suzaku. No! Suzaku! Yuffie screamed as Cornelia held her sister back to avoid getting pulled into the portal. But it was too late. The Lancelot had already fallen in completely as the portal closed, leaving both Yuffie and Cornelia stranded alone on the island. Two ground bridge portals opened as the Gawain and Lancelot emerged from their respective portals into a new environment. Suzaku. Lelouch noticed his friend's nightmare. Lelouch. Suzaku also noticed him. Where are Yuffie and Cornelia? Are they with you? Lelouch asked urgently. No, I pushed them out just before I was taken. Suzaku revealed as the Lancelot's cockpit closed. Where are we? Take a look around us. CC told the pair as she was already incredibly shocked by where they were. Lelouch and Suzaku both gasped once they got a good look as well. They appeared to be in the middle of an empty battlefield, where the site of a massacre had taken place. Broken and torn nightmares, tanks, and jets, with only a select few Vehicon bodies as well. Behind them by a few meters, was the burning remains of the royal palace. And all around them, was a small army of ground-based Vehicon troopers, surrounding them from all sides in the form of a large ring that was roughly 5 kilometers in diameter, along with Thundercracker and Skywarp. This is Pendragon, Lelouch muttered, recognizing the place he once called his home before he, Suzaku, and CC saw an incoming aircraft flying down toward them before it transformed to reveal the Decepticon leader himself. Hello boys. Megatron sneered. Megatron. Suzaku exclaimed, gripping the controls of the Lancelot so hard his knuckles would turn white, as he glared with as much hate as he could muster. Lelouch glared hard as well while CC looked with genuine concern. Like what I've done with the place? Megatron asked almost casually, referring to the destroyed Britannian capital all around them. I would have thought that you of all people would relish at the thought of Britannia being decapitated. 0. Or should I say, Lelouch v Britannia. Nobody, not Lelouch, not Suzaku, not even CC, could contain the frightened and startled gasps once they heard that. Or do you prefer your aliases, Lelouch Lamperouge? Megatron continued. Student at Ashford Academy, alongside your precious sister Nunnally. Though this is merely a cover for your true identity as the Ashford family provided shelter for you after Japan's fall. How very touching. You, how can you know, how can you possibly, Lelouch stuttered as his eyes began to shake. If you think I've only recently discovered your identity, you'd be wrong. Megatron revealed. I've been wise to the activities of your double life since the beginning, Lelouch. Just shortly after you and Optimus rescued Suzaku from his court-martial on the night of your debut. You and the Autobots gathered virtually all forms of resistance in Japan to build your Black Knights. At first it may have been out of revenge towards your father for exiling you and your sister, but somewhere down the line, you changed, didn't you? It's no longer about revenge, but true justice. Or at least what Optimus taught you as to what justice is. It's no wonder you've come so far under his mentorship. Lelouch couldn't believe it, even CC was in a state of total shock. The one thing he dreaded during his confrontations against Mao was that the Mind Reader would tell the Decepticons who he was, but Megatron had already known about it long before he even knew Mao existed. You knew. Suzaku muttered before it turned into a hateful glare. You knew. And you didn't even tell me. You didn't tell me Lelouch was 0. Even after I joined you. What would you have done if I did tell you, Suzaku? Megatron mused. I'm sure you would say something like you would try to change his mind, correct? But we both know that's not truly the case. You would have killed him, and stolen Nunnally away from him out of spite as well. No, Suzaku exclaimed. I wouldn't. You only fool yourself, just as you've always done. Megatron interrupted him. I've seen your mind, Suzaku. I know you even better than you know yourself. You're a killer, you always have been. Your so-called path of justice is nothing more than a self-entitled delusion you placed on yourself to ease your weakened conscience as you actively seek your own death. He chuckled in amusement. How pathetic. He's a killer, Lelouch muttered before it turned into a cry of outrage. He's a killer. You massacred the entire special zone. You destroyed your own planet. Even killed your own soldiers. That's right, Suzaku glared as the hate in him grew even more. Dreadwing, someone who was loyal to you beyond reproach, someone who valued honor above all else, just died. He sacrificed his life to stop Arachnid. A murderer that you brought into your ranks. That's all in the past. Megatron brushed off. The Special Zone, Cybertron, even Dreadwing, all in the past. The past, Suzaku could not believe what he just heard. You killed your own father, did you not? Megatron told Suzaku. Just as Lelouch killed his own half-brother. Though unlike you, Lelouch and myself choose not to dwell on the past, don't we Lelouch? He asked the young revolutionary, whose glare continued to harden. We learn from the past, even from our mistakes, and we use them to further our objectives. I am nothing like you, Lelouch sheathed as CC continued to look at him with concern, while also remaining silent. Maybe you're right, Megatron admitted. I had at first saw a bit of myself in you, Lelouch. But the truth is, there are only some minor similarities between us, aren't there? If anything, I see more of myself in Suzaku. He looked to the Lancelot, with Suzaku himself inside, looking ready to snap Megatron's neck at a moment's notice. We both hated the past of our worlds and sought to change it however we desired. And we've both killed to get to that point, didn't we? The only real difference is that I don't run from my mistakes, nor do I delude myself on foolish ideals of heroism. I know full well what I have done in the past, what I am doing now in the present, and what I intend to do in the future. Both young men were more than ready to attack as they continued to listen to Megatron's monologue. The truth is, boys, despite your shortcomings, Lelouch's constant interference with his rebellion, and Suzaku's delusions, I've allowed you both to carry on this way because I took a certain delight in watching your so-called friendship fall apart and you become the most hated of enemies. Megatron lulled. I honestly have a feeling, that even without me, this would have inevitably been your future. Are you so certain it's wise to bring Suzaku into your ranks after knowing his past, Lelouch? He killed his father, so nobody is off limits. What's to stop him from killing any of your friends? Such as that girl in your school, Shirley Finette. Or even Optimus. Or even Nunnally. He finished that last part with a smirk. He would have taken everything from you. By bringing him into your fold, you've only brought his blade that much closer to your own throat. Like how you've taken everything from Optimus after you betrayed him. Lelouch yelled at the top of his lungs. You killed millions, maybe even billions of innocent lives. Not just on Earth, but on Cybertron too. Nothing that happens between me and Lelouch is any of your concern. Suzaku screamed in hate at Megatron. Your very existence is a mistake. You are the absolute scum of the universe. And you must be purged. Megatron however wasn't remotely intimidated, if anything, he was actually excited, evident by his laugh. Well then, my white and black knights, by all means. Megatron drew his blade. Come and face the dragon at your door. Both Lelouch and Suzaku yelled as loud as they could as they charged their nightmares against their mutual enemy. Megatron. They both screamed as they attacked. Lelouch was the first to attack, firing the Gawaine's hadron cannons, which Megatron avoided by rolling to the side. Suzaku was next as the Lancelot drew both its MVS blades and tried to bring them down on Megatron, who blocked the swords with his own blade before throwing his arm out to knock Suzaku back right as Megatron dealt a powerful kick to the Lancelot to send it rolling across the ground. The Gawain fired all 10 of its finger-slash-harkens at Megatron, but he sliced through all of them with his blade as he charged the Gawain, which attempted to fly into the air, but Megatron had already leapt to grab the Gawain by its legs and pull it down to where Megatron dealt a powerful punch to knock it hard onto the ground. Right as Megatron landed, Suzaku attempted to strike from behind, but the Decepticon leader saw this coming as he thrusted his right elbow back into the Lancelot to knock it back before grabbing it by the head and throwing it over himself onto the Gawain, sending them both skidding across the ground, all three pilots inside grunting hard as they came to a halt. Lelouch, Suzaku, and CC all saw the smirking face of Megatron as he made the hand gesture to come here, indicating he was just warming up. That smirk was enough to send both Lelouch and Suzaku into an even greater spiral of anger as they pulled their nightmares up to charge again. Tokyo Settlement. With the arrival of the Nemesis and deployment of the Decepticon armada being led by Starscream, simply put, the Black Rebellion had descent into near-complete chaos, with all hell breaking loose. The massive warship hung directly over the palace as Optimus, Toto, and the four Holy Swords held back a group of Viacons. Optimus used his ion blasters to shoot down any flying Viacons that attempted to come in too close. Any that he missed, transformed to attack the group directly, and were quickly engaged by Toto and his men. The Viacons were certainly tougher than the average Britannian pilot, but the miracle worker of Itsukushima and his top soldiers had plenty of experience in fighting the Decepticons, so, when they moved in for close quarters combat with their swords, the Viacons were quickly cut down. Optimus to all teams, what is your status? Optimus made contact with the rest of his forces. We're getting seriously hammered here. Ogi exclaimed. A few Britannians are trying to push back against the cons, but we're outnumbered. A few more cons showed up at the school, too. Bumblebee reported. We got some kids here and we're pinned down. Cons at my tailpipe. Ray's in bad shape and his nightmare is toast. Bulkhead stated. We're cornered here, too. RC reported in as well. We can't hold out. Optimus, we have to retreat. Toto exclaimed as he sliced one Viacon in half vertically with his Geass katana. You're right. Optimus accepted gravely as he swung his axe to cut down 3 charging Viacons. Fix it, prepare multiple ground bridge extractions immediately. And find Lelouch's location. I'm already on it, Fix It reported. And it's not just Lelouch. It seems Suzaku is taken as well, and it looks like they're both in Pendragon. Optimus could only look in dread as he knew what that meant. But, right now, all he can do is make sure to get as many of their comrades back to the Ark as soon as possible. As much as he hated to admit, Lelouch and Suzaku could wait. All he could do was pray they hold out long enough. Send a ground bridge to Suzaku's last known location. Optimus told Fix It as he fired with his ion blaster into the air to shoot down 4 more jet Viacons. Euphemia and Cornelia may still be there. Understood. Fix It reported. Heads up. More incoming. Chiba warned as all 6 of them looked up to see a large swarm of Insecticons flying down their way. Optimus, Toto, and the Holy Swords each fired with their respective guns to try and shoot them down. Though they took down the frontmost couple, it didn't even seem to slow them down. That is until more gunfire came down toward the descending Insecticons from the side. Optimus and his allies looked in surprise to see two damaged, but still functional, Glosters falling from the side of the royal palace. One fired its Harken into the side of one Insecticon, pulling itself closer to the large insect-like robot before the Gloster plunged its spear into its side and used the Insecticon to lower its own descent toward the ground. The second Gloster dug its land spinner system into the wall before thrusting itself outward to land on the ground as both of them came to a halt right by the side of Optimus and the 5 Black Knights. "Traitorous Decepticons!" Darlton exclaimed. Cornelia's honor guard, Asahina, recognized them. "What are you doing here?" Senba questioned the pair. "We're not here to join you, if that's what you're thinking." Guilford told all of them. "But right now, the Decepticons are the main threat. Anything else can wait." "Very well." Optimus seemed to accept this, as did Toto and the others, as they all found themselves facing a large group of Insecticons, alongside a few more Viacons. "Attack!" Toto exclaimed as they all charged at their mutual enemy. "All Raikos! Fire!" Ironhide exclaimed as all their Reiko cannons fired straight into the air, the shrapnel weapons taking out multiple jet and helicopter Viacons, while several more landed on the ground to engage in close quarters combat with the Black Knights and surviving Britannian soldiers. Though the Black Knights' magnesium ammunition was able to kill off more than a few Viacon troopers, many proved quicker than anticipated as they ran and opened fire with their energon blasters, already killing several Black Knights as well. Even the Britannian nightmares were all but useless in direct combat as the Viacons punched and tore them apart, or even shot them at point-blank close range. Wheeljack leapt into a group of 4 Viacons to quickly cut them down with his swords as Tamaki and a group of Wrecker Beret laid some covering fire with their missiles, which were assisted by the Reiko cannons as they fired again into the army of Viacons on the ground, taking down quite a handful of them. Starscream and a squadron of Seeker Viacons flew in the air to observe the battle. "All Seekers, concentrate your firepower on their heavy artillery," Starscream ordered as he and his squadron let loose a volley of missiles, which all scored direct hits all the Reiko cannons, resulting in their explosive destruction. "We just lost the Reikos," Ironhide exclaimed. "Ironhide, the ground bridge is open," Obi reported as a large ground bridge portal opened up behind his Barai before he made contact with the rest of his forces. All Black Knights were pulling back. Full retreat. Not needing to be told twice, every single Black Knight Barai and other form of resistance made a beeline straight for the ground bridge portal, whether by vehicle or even on foot. "Wheeljack, Wrecker units, you're all with me. Cover the retreat," Ironhide ordered as he, alongside Ogi, regrouped with Wheeljack and Tamaki's squadron to form a thin line that separated the Decepticon forces from their retreating allies. All of them opened fire and practically emptied their ammunition as they pressed against the seemingly endless horde of Decepticons. Bumblebee hid behind the clubhouse, peeking over the other side to return fire on a squad of Viacons. He shot down one, but the remaining 7 returned fire. Though B was safe behind the clubhouse, alongside Ratchet, along with Shirley, Lloyd, Rivals, Millie, Nina, Cecile, Monica, and even Arthur, the building was already on the verge of collapse. "Guys, we got a ground bridge," Shirley shouted as she pointed to the swirling portal in front of them. "Everyone in the portal, now," Ratchet exclaimed as he limped toward the portal, still greatly injured from his fight, but was still able to make it inside, followed by all the humans and their cat as Bumblebee kept them covered. Once the scout was sure they all made it inside, he ran into the ground bridge himself before it closed. RC held Colin close to her person with one hand, while hiding behind a building for cover. She shot out from the other side and got 2 headshots in, only to find cover again as the Viacons returned fire. "RC, heads up," Colin warned as a trio of Viacons flew over the building in helicopter form before they transformed and landed. Fortunately, salvation came in the form of Gino with his Tristian as he rolled straight into them, shot his Harkens to decapitate one Viacon and swung the cables out to knock down the remaining 2, allowing RC to finish them off with surprise headshots. A ground bridge portal then suddenly opened up on their right. "That's our ride," RC stated before she turned to the Tristian. Let's go. No, you guys go. I'll hold them off, Gino stated. Are you freaking crazy? Colin exclaimed. These guys will crush you in your nightmare like tuna. Sorry, but this is just my thing, Gino said as he smirked. I'll see if I can gather any surviving Britannians and mount some kind of resistance. That way it'll make things easier for your guys. Don't be a hero, you freaking idiot, RC shouted. You just worry about your own friends, Gino told them. Don't worry about me. Oh, and Colin, if you see any of our friends from school, tell them I said hi. He then shot his Tristian around the building to engage the Decepticons alone. Come and get me, you bastards. That moron, Colin muttered in frustration and worry. Colin, we gotta go, RC told her. She may not have been Gino's biggest fan, but even she didn't like the idea of leaving him behind like this. But regardless, they had to retreat and regroup with their friends. Yeah, I get it, Colin said with reluctance. She wouldn't exactly call Gino her friend either, but he was at least a decent guy. All she could do was silently wish him luck as RC carried her into the ground bridge portal before it closed. Bulkhead drove in his vehicle mode, swerving to avoid the energon blasts of the tank Viacons in their own vehicle modes. Nonette held the injured Rai close to her as she desperately tried to maintain a firm grip on the seat to avoid flying across the truck. Not that I'm complaining, but I think I might get car sick right now, and Ray's in bad shape, Nonette stated. Sorry, can't do much when you're avoiding tank fire, Bulkhead replied before a ground bridge portal opened in front of them. There's our exit. Hang on. He gunned straight for the portal and was able to make it just in time to avoid another tank shot that would have obliterated the ground below him. Knockout walked up in front of the transforming tank Viacons as he looked in minor disappointment. Looks like they got away. A smirk then appeared on his face. Well, it doesn't matter, there's nowhere else left to run since we're now in control. He chuckled. Adios Britannia, may you rest in peace. He laughed alongside the Viacons. However, none of them seemed to notice that Dorothea was hiding behind some rubble near the exit of the depot with a hateful scowl on her face. She almost couldn't believe it. Britannia has fallen. Their emperor, dead. That's impossible. Whatever the case, the Decepticons would pay for this. She'll regroup with Bismarck and anyone else here in Area 11 and stage a counterattack. She silently vowed that the Decepticons would rue the day they dared to mock Britannia. Meanwhile, on Kaname Island, Yuffie looked as if she were about to have a panic attack. All she could do was blame herself for everything that happened, the says that turned into a massacre, which led to this rebellion, which was nothing more than a distraction for Megatron to take over Britannia, which he succeeded in doing. And now, he was probably attacking the settlement, where Lelouch and everyone else were. Not to mention Suzaku's been taken to God knows where. How could all this have happened? Honestly, the only thing that kept her from probably losing it was that she was also in Cornelia's arms, who tried to comfort her younger sister as best she could. Suddenly, much to the shock of the two sisters, a ground bridge portal opened up right behind them. Quickly rushing out of the portal was Sayoko as she quickly kneeled down to address the pair. Come with me if you want to live, she told them. Nunnally is waiting for both of you. That caught both of them by surprise. But Cornelia was the first to get serious as she helped up her younger sister and they followed Sayoko into the ground bridge, which closed behind them. A few seconds after the portal closed, however, a metallic hand shot out of the ground as Arachnid began to pull herself back to the surface. However, she was probably in the worst shape she'd ever been in as she could only crawl on the ground. Due to being too close to Dreadwing's bomb, her right arm, along with all her right spider legs, were completely blown off, along with the right side of her face, which was now missing an optic. Though Dreadwing himself was dead, it did not quench the hate she felt inside. So, she would then direct that hate to someone else she viewed as equally guilty, and added his name to her list alongside Colin and RC. Kururugi, I vow, I will have your head, Arachnid muttered in agony. But not before I make you watch, as I butcher everyone you love. Back on the front lines, despite the best efforts of Ogi, Ironhide, Wheeljack, Tamaki, and all their wrecker units, already half of the Black Knights and rebel forces have been wiped out. Though several had fortunately escaped through the ground bridge that they desperately covered, they were unable to save everybody. Even the surviving Britannians had been wiped out by the Decepticon forces, even a few wrecker berets were destroyed. That's it. That's everyone, Ogi stated as the last of their surviving comrades made it into the portal. Fall back now, Ironhide ordered as he, Ogi, Tamaki, and Wheeljack were the last ones to enter the portal. But not before Wheeljack turned back around to lob one final grenade to blow up a group of 7 Viacons before he ran inside himself right as the portal closed. Starscream descended toward the ground as he transformed to observe the wreckage across the battlefield alongside his army. So, a few escaped. Let them run, Starscream sneered. They've already lost more than half their forces. This world is ours now. And nobody can stop us. He finished with an evil chuckle. Finally, the only remaining team in the settlement was Optimus' own team, consisting of Toto, the 4 Holy Swords, and the unexpected assistance of Guilford and Darlton. Optimus brought down his axe to slice through the face and chest of one Insecticon and kill it before firing his ion blaster with a charged shot to shoot a hole through the second. 2 attempted to come at Optimus from behind, but Toto swerved in with his custom Gekka to quickly slice and decapitate one Insecticon. As he tried to impale the second, it actually caught the Gekka's sword in its claws before dealing a powerful punch that knocked the Gekka down, creating a large dent in its chest. Fortunately, Optimus had already turned around to punch down the Insecticon and bring his axe down upon it to finish it off. Urabe and Asahina rolled around one Insecticon as they fired their guns at its legs to bring it down to its knees, allowing them to draw their Gekka's blades and bring them down onto its head to kill it. But they didn't have time to celebrate as 3 more landed in front to engage them. However, Senba and Chiba shot their Gekkas forward and held their katanas out as they slid and sliced past the middle Insecticon, cutting it in half, before they regrouped with their teammates to engage the growing number of enemies that continued to wear them down. Darlton roared as he shot his Glosters/Harkins and rifle at one Insecticon. It all concentrated on its head to obliterate it and bring it down. Though a second one appeared in front of him and grabbed the jousting lance that Darlton attempted to thrust at it and then grabbed onto the Nightmare with its other claw to pin it to the ground as the Insecticon raised its claw. "I have failed you, Princess Cornelia," Darlton said in reluctant acceptance as the Insecticon brought its claw down to crush the entire Nightmare, killing Darlton in the process. "Sir Darlton," Guilford exclaimed at seeing the death of his comrade and friend as he shot everything. He had the Insecticon that killed him, and was able to end its life in the process. A ground bridge portal suddenly opened up on the area, close toward Optimus as he cut down another Insecticon with his axe. "All units, fall back," Optimus ordered as Urabe, Senba, Chiba, Asahina, and finally Toto entered the portal. Optimus turned around to see Guilford still engaging the Insecticons. "Go. I'll cover you," Guilford exclaimed as he unloaded his rifle on the charging horde. "You will not survive. Come with us," Optimus almost pleaded. "No. This is my duty," Guilford stated firmly. "I have a responsibility, just as you probably have one yourself, Optimus Prime. But, if you manage to rescue Princess Cornelia, or even Princess Euphemia, tell them I'm sorry I couldn't protect them. As a soldier of Britannia, I will fight to the last," he exclaimed as he made one final charge into the horde of monstrous aliens. Optimus gave a nod of respect and acknowledgement. "Good luck, soldier." He then turned around to enter the portal, leaving Guilford alone as it closed. Guilford lunged his lance into the face of one Insecticon, impaling and killing it. He turned around to fire his /Harkins into the chest of one approaching from behind, but that only irritated it as it gave an uppercut slice with its claws to knock the Gloster back before firing an Energon blast at its legs to obliterate the Gloster's lower half and send the rest of it skidding across the ground. Inside the cockpit, Guilford's vision had grown fuzzy, with a bleeding gash across his forehead, his glasses broken as well. He glanced with what little time of consciousness he had to see he was completely surrounded. "Princess Cornelia, forgive me, I failed you," he thought before he finally lost consciousness. Meanwhile, within the sewer system beneath the battlefield that was once the Tokyo settlement, Bismarck tried to make his way even deeper to avoid detection of the Decepticons. He already heard Megatron's declaration, and something in his gut told him that Megatron's report of the death of Charles Z. Britannia was likely true. It seemed Britannia has met its end, despite him wanting to scream that it was not true. As the Knight of One made it out of a small tunnel and into a more open area of the sewers, a light suddenly flashed on him as he looked in surprise to see a working Sutherland standing over him. "Bismarck, come with me," a certain young girl said to him. Though Bismarck could see the body of Anya Alström, he also recognized the tone of her voice and saw the red rings of Geass in her eyes and knew immediately who it was. "Lady Marianne," Bismarck acknowledged, relieved to regroup with her. The Sutherland lowered itself, allowing him to step inside before it drove deeper into the sewers. "I'm pleased you made it. What's the plan?" "I got a signal from Dorothea, as well as her location," Marianne informed. "Even Gino survived. We'll regroup and try to make contact with the Pacific Fleet and anyone else who's willing to help and launch an attack of our own." "Understood." Bismarck nodded. A pained scowl formed on the face of the possessed Anya as Marianne cried tears of grief and frustration through the younger girl's body. "Megatron, you took my Charles away from me, now you're going to take away the dream we worked so hard for. No, you will not do this to us. I swear, if it's the last thing I do, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Count on it." Pendragon, Thundercracker, Skywarp, and all the Viacons watched and even cheered as they continued to witness their leader fight and beat down the Gawain and the Lancelot. Even VV watched from underneath Skywarp. Though he wasn't cheering for Megatron, he'd be lying to say he wasn't upset at the thought of Lelouch getting hurt. He could also sense that CC was with him as well, and once Megatron gets a hold of her, he was certain he could convince Metatron to allow him the opportunity to torture her for walking out on him and Charles. Given she's immortal, he was certain Megatron wouldn't mind. Suzaku fired his Varus at Megatron, but he deflected each bolt with his blade, the blasts exploding on impact from the ground as they were deflected while he ran closer toward the Lancelot. Once Megatron was close enough, he decked a powerful punch to the Lancelot's face to send it tumbling to the ground, but Megatron wasn't done yet as he picked up the White Nightmare by its leg and flipped it over him to smack it hard on the ground. Megatron then leapt back to avoid the Hadron blasts from the Gawain as it charged down toward him at full speed and locked hands with him. However, Megatron stood his ground as he pressed harder, giving both Lelouch and CC much difficulty in pushing him back. "How was that you put it, Lelouch? The only ones who should kill, are those prepared to be killed." Megatron recalled in sadistic fashion before he used his raw strength to grab and rip off the Gawain's entire left arm and use it like a makeshift club to smack the Gawain as CC desperately put up its blaze luminous system. But it was already damaged and the shield shattered upon the strike, before Megatron decked a series of punches so hard that it crushed the Gawain's outer armor with each strike before Megatron drew his blade again to slice down vertically as Lelouch tried to pull the Black Nightmare away, only to result in having the head and cockpit cut open, and revealing both his and CC's faces to Megatron before he gave a powerful uppercut that sent the Gawain hurtling in the air before crashing down. "Megatron!" Suzaku called from behind as he leapt with the Lancelot high into the air and yelled as he tried to bring both his MVS blades down onto him, but Megatron timed it perfectly that as he was about to land, Megatron clapped both blades in between his hands and halted Suzaku's attack. "So now you make the decision to kill," Megatron remarked. "Such skill, and now, such hatred and ferocity. Under my guidance, you could have easily been the most feared human on this planet, possibly beyond. A true harbinger of death. You do not know what you threw away. The only thing I intend to throw away is your life," Suzaku exclaimed as he tried to press further, but Megatron was already on the attack as he snapped his hands to snap both MVS swords in half before he picked up the Lancelot and held it high above his head. "I think not," Megatron said simply before he brought the Lancelot down hard onto his raised knee, almost breaking it entirely in half before throwing the damaged Nightmare toward the downed Gawain. As Megatron loomed closer towards them, the evil smile clearly visible on his face, Lelouch couldn't help but shake in his seat as fear swept through his body. "His strength and speed are beyond anything I can anticipate, and his strategies are just as savage as his blows. He orchestrated the massacre at the Special Zone and the ensuing rebellion to not only decapitate Britannia, but also tire us out and leave us vulnerable. Optimus and the others tried to tell me, but now that I've seen it myself, this being, this monster, is unstoppable." Even CC looked in dread as Megatron stomped his foot on the damaged Gawain to pin it down as he gazed his sinister eyes on the immortal girl and her contractor. "No, don't touch them." Suzaku stuttered as he desperately tried to pull himself out of the Lancelot, though he was greatly injured himself. Ah, the immortal CC, we meet at last. Megatron sneered as CC gasped slightly. Tell me, my dear, and you as well Lelouch. His optics turned from red to purple as a darkened version of a familiar sigil appeared in his eyes. What is it you fear most? Neither of them could believe what they just saw. He has a Geass. Lelouch and CC exclaimed simultaneously just as the sigil made its way in both their eyes, causing a dark purple ring to form in both of them. When CC opened her eyes, she was surprised to find herself completely naked as she was tied to a stake before she was set on fire, while also being shot by guns and arrows from all directions, with multiple swords raining down on her from above, causing her to scream in agony. It all then faded as CC found herself bound completely in her straitjacket, which kept her in a ball-like formation. Even her mouth was covered as she was almost completely encompassed in a metallic ball with the Geass emblem on its surface. No! CC screamed in her mind as she couldn't even talk. Don't leave me here. Don't leave me in this hell all alone. Please. She begged as tears flowed down her eyes as the sphere was just about to close and seal her away in darkness. Someone. Lelouch. Optimus. Help me. She screamed before she was completely sealed away. Lelouch gave a gasp as he found himself completely surrounded by a fire that encompassed virtually everyone he saw. What? Where am I? CC. Suzaku. Lelouch, he heard his name being called all around him by multiple familiar voices. The flames began to clear away slightly, causing him to gasp at what he saw. He saw not only Colin, Suzaku, Rai, and CC, but even Ogi, Toto, Kagaya, Tamaki, as well as Shirley, Millie, Rivals, Sayoko, and even Yuffie and Cornelia. They were all tied to crosses around them. Lelouch, help us, Shirley muttered as several shadows were cast over Lelouch, causing his pupils to look in dread as he saw several hooked chains that held the decapitated heads of every Autobot he knew: Bumblebee, Bulkhead, RC, Cliffjumper, Wheeljack, Ironhide, Ratchet, Fixit, and even Optimus himself. No, Lelouch muttered as the flames expanded to encompass all his friends and leave not even Ash left, while at the same time, the Autobots' heads rusted away before turning into dust and were blown away by the flames. No, this isn't supposed to. However, when Lelouch glanced down, he saw something that made his heart stop completely. It was Nunnally. She laid across the ground, in a puddle of blood, just barely breathing. Nunnally. Lelouch cried as he picked her up and desperately tried to shake her awake. Nunnally. Please. Not you too. Lelouch, he heard her voice as he glanced down with shaky eyes at her barely living form. You ate 1,000 needles, those were her last words before her body was engulfed in flames, leaving only a charred skeleton in his arms. At this point, all Lelouch could do was scream in agonizing terror and dread. Lelouch and CC's screams caught Suzaku's attention as he had made his way from the ruined Lancelot and into the Gawaine's cockpit. He gave a gasp once he saw CC fall back, appearing to be unconscious, but in reality, her heart had stopped. As for Lelouch, he screamed as if he was in the middle of a night terror he couldn't wake up from. Lelouch. Suzaku tried to shake him awake. Snap out of it, Lelouch. However, he wasn't able to, as Lelouch continued to fidget in place, groaning, yelling, and even screaming endlessly. CC gave a gasp as her immortality kicked in to bring her back to life. But she didn't have time to collect her thoughts as she heard Lelouch's screams, turning around to see the state he was in. No, how is this possible? CC muttered. How can a Geass? That, my dear immortal, is my power. Megatron revealed as she and Suzaku turned around to gaze up at the tower Megatron. My dark Geass of absolute terror. Dark Geass. CC voiced in shock, while Suzaku only looked confused. Courtesy of the blood of Unicron which flows through my veins. Megatron explained. The dark substance, combined with the Geass power extracted from Mao's body, gave birth to this power. And I didn't even need to form a contract with anyone. A Geass so powerful, it can affect humans, Cybertronians, and even immortals such as yourself and VV. My power, unlike any you've probably seen, allows me to look inside the soul of any individual and bring out their innermost fears. I can then send them into a vision of my own making, not too different from that of a nightmare. I can also determine how much of a strain my power puts on my victims' minds. It could range from a simple fright, one they could easily wake out of it, or even a night terror so bad, that their minds and body are unable to handle it, and they die. That caused CC to gasp. A Geass that can directly kill someone. I can also choose to bring someone out of a vision, no matter how terrible it is. Megatron continued. But Lelouch has earned something very special. I've subjected him to an unending nightmare that will continue to grow in strength until his mind succumbs to pure insanity, and still keep going, until his mind and body give out. A slow and agonizing death is all that awaits him now. And all he'll ever see, is his greatest fears unfolding in front of him. Monster, CC muttered in fright. You're a monster. A demon. You're the devil incarnate. Megatron only looked in amusement. Foolish girl. You only realize that now. CC could not contain the crippling fear she now felt for the Decepticon leader. But don't worry, my dear. While death awaits your precious contractor, life awaits you. Or rather, a life is my personal weapon. He then glanced at Suzaku, who looked in a mixture of hate, fear, and confusion. You, Suzaku, aren't even worth wasting my power on. Instead, I shall give you the death you've so longed for. The Decepticon leader brought out his blade again and raised it high with the intent on finishing the fight. However, a ground bridge portal suddenly opened in front of him as Optimus Prime rushed out to deck Megatron across the face and send him skidding on his feet across the ground. Optimus didn't even give Megatron a chance to recover as he dealt yet another punch and kept attacking. RC, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, Wheeljack and Ironhide all came out as well as they addressed their human compatriots. Are you guys okay? Bulkhead asked. What are you? What happened in the settlement? Suzaku questioned. No time to explain. We need to go, Ironhide stated. They all heard Lelouch's screams and looked in shock at the state he was in. What in the Allspark happened to Lelouch? Bumblebee questioned. Just get us out of here. Now. CC screamed in a panic. Incoming. Wheeljack alerted as the Autobots all turned around to see Thundercracker, Skywarp, and multiple Viacons running onto the scene and opening fire at them with the Energon blasters, which the Autobots returned fire with their own as they covered Bumblebee, who picked up Lelouch, Suzaku, and CC in his arms. Optimus threw another punch at Megatron, but the Decepticon warlord was able to catch not only that punch, but the other one that Optimus threw as Megatron looked at his old enemy with a sadistic smile. Ah, Optimus, I've been wanting to use this on you for some time, and lo and behold, you come to me. Megatron sneered as his dark Geass manifested in his optics again, much to the surprise of Optimus. A Geass. Show me your terror, Optimus Prime. Megatron's dark Geass sigil flew directly into Optimus' optics as they turned from blue to purple. When Optimus opened his optics, he looked around to find he was no longer on Earth, but on a desolate Cybertron, the ground covered with the rusted and lifeless husks of countless fallen Autobots. Cybertron. Optimus, he heard the ghostly wails of several of his fallen comrades. Why did you fail us? You promised to save our home, to save us, but now, we are all dead, and it's all your fault. Optimus fell to his knees as he held his head in despair. No, I didn't. You failed us. 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 A million ghostly voices filled his mind, repeating this over and over as Optimus desperately tried to block it out. Back in reality, the Autobots did their best to hold back the Decepticon forces and keep the trio of human allies safe. But RC gave a gasp as she saw Optimus fall to his knees in front of Megatron. Optimus. RC transformed and tried to gun it straight for her leader. RC. Wait. Ironhide tried to call out to her, but an explosion erupted in front of her as she skidded to a halt before transforming back to come face to face with Thundercracker and Skywarp. Megatron laughed as he drew his blade again over his kneeling adversary. And so it ends, just as I envisioned. With your head as my trophy. He raised his blade, ready to end the lineage of the Primes once and for all. However, Megatron failed to notice a bright glow coming from within Optimus' chest. I am sorry, Optimus pleaded as he fell on his hands and knees, the ghosts of the millions of fallen Cybertronians circling around him. I have failed you, I failed everyone. But are you willing to give up in spite of that failure? A new and familiar voice echoed from behind him. The source came from a bright light, The illumination appeared to blast away all the ghosts as Optimus turned around to see a white glowing figure of the Cybertronian that he knew most of his life. Alpha Trion. Optimus, do you remember what I told you before the war started? Alpha Trion's spirit asked him. What are the greatest virtues of a leader? To protect all who serve and aid you. Optimus recalled. To bear the burden and responsibility. Yes, but also equally important, is the willingness to not only accept your failures, but the inevitability that some things remain outside our control. Alpha Trion replied. Cybertron's destruction was not your error. You did everything you could to save our home. But it wasn't enough. Optimus said. Megatron may have been the one to do the deed, but had I changed his mind sooner, had I stopped him from going down his path before the war started. We cannot change the past. But we can learn from it. Alpha Trion told him. You do remember these lessons, don't you? How could you not, when you have passed them on to a student of your own? Lelouch. Yes. Alpha Trion confirmed. Underneath the spite and anger, you saw both an injured soul as well as a longing for justice. You saw the best in that boy and look where that has led. You have instilled hope into the soul of one who has almost completely lost it, and in return, he has passed on that hope to all those around him, transforming their lives just as you have transformed the lives of those around you. Cybertron may be gone, but hope remains. Hope that this world, this universe, can be saved from the darkness. Hearing the words of his mentor again, Optimus clenched his fists as a serious expression formed on his face. You're right. My work is not done, our work is not done. We will defend this world. Then go and keep fighting, Optimus. Till all are one, Alpha Trion said as his spirit faded away. Till all are one, Optimus repeated as his chest plate opened to reveal the matrix of leadership, which began to shine a bright blue that illuminated the entire illusion and dispersed it. Megatron brought his blade down, only for a pair of hands to reach up and clap it, halting it just before it made contact. Optimus Prime looked up with a hardened glare as the purple glow in his optics faded away. Megatron. Optimus stated as his faceplate closed, causing Megatron to look in clear shock before Optimus pulled back a fist. Be gone. He decked Megatron across the face, before following with another punch. CC gave a gasp as she saw Optimus stand up and attack Megatron. She knew Megatron had used his dark Geass on him, and yet, Optimus was able to stand back up and continue fighting. She couldn't believe it. Before she knew it, tears of joy were already flowing down her face as she felt a sensation she never once felt before, or rather, something she never felt she'd ever feel again, not truly, hope. Impossible. Megatron thought as Optimus continued to punch him across his body repeatedly. Impossible. How can he resist my dark Geass? Is this the power of the Matrix? Or is it something else? Optimus dealt the final blow with a powerful uppercut that sent Megatron soaring high into the air before crashing down onto the ground. Lord Megatron. Thundercracker turned around in shock, along with Skywarp, which gave RC an opening to sweep her feet and knock both of them down before making her way back to her friends and shooting down the remaining Viacons that tried to attack them and the three defenseless humans they protected. No way, are you kidding me? VV thought in shock. Megatron's dark Geass can affect even code bearers like me and CC. How can Optimus of all people actually resist it? We've seen people resist the power of Geass through their own will, but nothing is stronger than what Megatron has. So how can he? VV's fists clenched as he gnashed his teeth while glaring at the Autobot leader. Optimus Prime, what the hell are you? Optimus, we got the kids. Ironhide called to his leader. Autobots, fall back. Optimus ordered as one by one, they all ran into the groundbridge portal, having dispensed with the last of the Viacons that attacked them. Bumblebee was first as he still carried Lelouch, CC, and Suzaku, followed by Bulkhead, Wheeljack, and RC, with Ironhide glancing back to wait for his leader. Once Optimus caught up, Ironhide gave a smile and nod before he ran into the ground bridge, followed by Optimus just as the portal closed. They escaped. Thundercracker exclaimed. Who cares? Skywarp dismissed. We've pretty much wiped out more than half their forces in Area 11. But that still leaves us with almost half as many enemies, with Optimus and the Autobots still leading them. Thundercracker argued. We can't dismiss. Silence. They both heard Megatron's voice below as they both turned toward their master, who stood up to wipe the dark energon that dripped from his mouth. Though he was more than a little frustrated that Optimus was able to overcome the power of his dark Geass, he did learn from his cortical psychic patch from VV that an individual can resist the power of a Geass, depending on the power, if they have a strong enough will. And as much as he hated to admit it, Megatron knew Optimus' willpower was likely one of the strongest forces in the universe, rivaling his own. But, it wasn't all that bad, evident by the evil smirk that fell on Megatron's face. Run, Optimus, soon, there will be nowhere left for you to hide. You've lost your closest human ally. Lelouch is strong, but not nearly as strong as you. He will meet his end, and with the end of Zero, humanity's hope will come to a crashing end. Thundercracker, Skywarp. Yes, Lord Megatron, they both asked as they stood for duty. Rendezvous with Starscream in Area 11, see to it our grip there is as tight as ever. Megatron ordered them. I will work with Soundwave about calling for additional forces, for this is merely the beginning. He stated with sadistic jubilation. Britannia is lost. All its resources, including the Geass Order and Ragnarok, belong to me. Once we call our scattered brethren, we shall use the Earth as a foundation from which we shall build our empire that will span the entire universe. Victory is ours. Ha, 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 yes. Ha, 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 ha. Till all are one. Nunnally was in the ground bridge bay along with Kagaya and Chigusa as they watched the Black Knights, or what was left of them, return to the Ark after their substantial defeat. Nunnally didn't need to see to know just how depressing the atmosphere was for all of them, and she understood all too well. They all fought with everything they had to reclaim the home that Britannia had stolen from them, and the Decepticons came in and all but crushed that hope. Ogi, Toto, and the four Holy Swords had also arrived as they helped Ratchet and Fix-It in directing the most injured of soldiers to the medical bay in the Ark to receive the necessary treatment. Ogi helped lay the unconscious Inoue on a stretcher, her right leg missing, as she was wheeled off to the infirmary. Ogi glanced towards Chigusa with an expression of disappointment and fear, something that she tried to give comfort in as she walked toward him and silently embraced him, which he was quick enough to return. Lady Nunnally. Sayoko approached from behind. I've brought your sisters. The disabled girl gave a surprised gasp as Kagaya and Sayoko escorted her around the corner where both Euphemia and Cornelia sat in depressing silence. The only comfort they shared was the fact that they were both safe with each other. Euphi, Cornelia. They heard a meek girl's voice call to them, causing them to turn around with a gasp of their own as they saw their half-sister. Nunnally. Euphi immediately ran toward her disabled sister and wrapped her arms around her, shedding even more tears than she already had. Tears of both relief that they were safe, but also of grief in that she lost one of her closest friends, and Suzaku was missing as well. Nunnally had a feeling Euphi went through a terrible ordeal, so she tried to comfort her sister as best she could. Upon seeing Nunnally, Cornelia was filled with so many mixed emotions. Like her younger sister, Cornelia was very relieved to see Nunnally safe and sound, but all those thoughts of regret she had over unknowingly trying to kill their brother, and the thought she had failed her, seemed to override any happiness she felt as all she could feel was guilt. Nunnally. Cornelia stuttered as she slowly walked toward her as she briefly parted with Euphi. However, she was surprised as Nunnally reached out her hand to caress the side of Cornelia's face. It's okay, you're safe now. You and Euphi, that's all that matters. Nunnally assured with a smile. That was it, that was all that was needed for the dam to break with Cornelia as she buried her face into Nunnally's chest and cried her eyes out. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Nunnally didn't hesitate to embrace her crying half-sister as Euphi wrapped her arms around both of them as well. Kagaya and Sayoko watched this as well. Though they both had mixed feelings in regard to Cornelia, due to her past actions as their enemy, something told them that she wasn't going to be a problem for them anymore. And they weren't the only ones watching. Off on the side, Shirley, Millie, Nina, Rivals, and even Monica all saw this as well, with Arthur slowly walking toward the three sisters to rub his side against all of them to provide some comfort as well. Princess Euphemia. Nina wanted to run over there and embrace her, but Shirley placed a hand on her shoulder, silently telling her that Euphi needs to be around her sisters right now. They could talk to her later. Nina seemed to understand, but was just nonetheless glad that Euphemia was safe and sound. Wow, would have thought we'd see Viceroy of Cornelia of all people break down like that. Millie commented. I'm still not over the fact that Nunnally and Lelouch are both royalty, or that Lelouch is also zero. Rivals stated. Seriously, that's all just so crazy. And, you knew about this surely? Nina asked the brunette. I mean, it makes sense for Millie since the Ashfords took them both in but. Yeah, it's complicated. Shirley hadn't gone over the details of how exactly she found out quite yet, given what they've all experienced right now was stressful enough. I'm sorry. I suppose it makes sense, though. Monica admitted. Having your mother murdered, your sister blinded and crippled, and then being exiled only to be caught in the middle of a war that your own nation started, yeah, I'd be pretty mad about all that too. The group heard a pain-induced grunt coming from around the area as they turned to see Colin and Nonette helping Rye, his right arm and leg broken, to sit down. Rye, you need to get yourself looked at. Nonette told him. Your arm and leg are broken. The docs got their hands full right now, Rye grunted. I'm just glad I still have an arm and a leg. Colin, Rye, they, and Nonette, turned to see Shirley quickly run up toward them. I'm glad you guys made it. She gave a small gasp once she saw Nonette. Though Rye had already told her that the older woman was once his knight, she also knew that Nonette was a knight of the round, so it made her a little concerned. It's okay Shirley, she's on our side, Rye assured. Really? She asked in surprise. Yeah, actually helped Rye and the wreckers out. Colin said. Shirley also noticed a look of sadness and devastation in Colin's eyes, the same look she saw in her own reflection once she learned of her own father's death back in Naratia. Nonette. The Knight of Nine looked up in shock to see her comrade present as well. Monica. She left Rye to quickly run up and address the Knight of 12. You made it. Yes, the details of me being here though are kinda complicated. Monica said. I'll explain later, but, have you seen any of the others? No, Nonette admitted. Guess we're the only ones. But Colin here did confirm that Bradley was killed. She then noticed Cornelia and Yuffie, who were still with Nunnally, alongside Sayoko and Kagaya. Seeing both of them alive and safe was a huge weight off Nonette's chest, and as much as she wanted to run over and hug them both, she decided to let them have their moment with Nunnally, whom she was already told about by Rye upon her arrival to the Ark. Well, if you want to know at least about Gino, Colin spoke to the pair as she sat down next to Rye. He stayed behind to buy RC and I time to get back here. I don't know if he survived though. Hope the guy's okay. Rivals said. He is a knight of the round, so, Nina put her thoughts in, though she sounded a little unsure himself. Shirley, however, noticed something in Colin's wording. Wait, what about Cliffjumper? Wasn't he with you in RC? Hearing that name caused Colin to stiffen as she glanced downward to sob, much to Shirley's surprise. Colin. Wright put his only good arm on Colin's shoulder to comfort her as he looked to the brunette with a saddened expression. Cliff didn't make it, Shirley. This caused Shirley to gasp in shock as she looked in total sympathy as Colin cried into her hands, still clearly mourning over the loss of her partner and friend. Shirley wasted no time in hugging Colin as best she could. I'm so sorry. Colin returned the embrace as she continued to cry, with Wright patting Colin's back as well. Millie, Rivals, and Nina continued to look on, along with Monica and Nonette as they each had their own sympathetic expressions as well. Keep it going. Ratchet continued to direct the injured. Anyone who's suffering from major trauma, please follow the line straight to medical. All equipment, including nightmares, come secondary. So, this is the Autobots, base I presume. The Autobot medic looked down to see a certain male scientist walk up with a casual expression. It's Ratchet, right? Though Ratchet did recognize Lloyd from the incident at Ashford, he still had no idea who he was. And who are you? Lloyd Asplund, creator of the Lancelot, and official trader for the now-destroyed Britannia, at your service. He gave a formal bow. Sorry, Cecile walked up with an apologetic smile. But he's not exactly what you call a normal person. Normality is underrated anyway. Lloyd brushed off. Oh, look who's here. They, and Ratchet, turned to see Rakshata walking onto the scene. I never expected to find you here, Asplund. But I'm not surprised to find you here, Rakshata. Lloyd acknowledged. It's only fair. Rakshata said with a causal grin. You got a chance to play with aliens, now I am too. Well, they wouldn't let me get my hands on their juicier stuff, Lloyd said with an irritated sigh. Oh, is that so? Rakshata said with a trolling grin. Because I've been given complete access to everything here. Sewa, Lloyd questioned with a blank stare. Including 2 very special little toys. Rakshata continued in a gloating sense. One being a weaponized magnet, the other a weapon of immobilization. I have to say, Cybertronians have such amazing toys. Do you have any amazing toys to play with? Lloyd was rendered completely speechless as he couldn't find a proper argument, other than an eye twitch. I'll take that as a, no, Earl of Pudding. Am I correct to assume there is some form of history with those two? Ratchet asked Cecile. It's hardly worth mentioning, Cecile replied. And when I think back on it now, it wasn't anything at all. Meanwhile, Ogi, Tamaki, and Toto had helped to guide the last of the injured, along with the 4 holy swords. That appears to be everyone, Ogi said before he glanced down. Except for. We'll leave Lelouch and Suzaku to the Autobots. Toto told him before addressing his men. Now, you 4 get some rest as well. Colonel, we're fine, Chiba told him. There's no need. You're dismissed. Toto said in a more assertive tone. Take this time to rest your minds. If there's anything, I'll contact you. Yes sir. Asahina, Urabe, and Senba all said as they walked away, leaving only Chiba as she looked down before she nodded to her colonel to join the others. Tamaki, you doing okay? Ogi asked his comrade. Yeah, sure. Tamaki began. I mean, we just lost more than half our army. Japan is being remolded by the cons. Our leader is Mia, and the bots are in the Dragon's Den right now, and pretty much all our hopes and dreams have been shattered, but otherwise, swell. Complaining isn't going to change what happened. Toto said firmly. All we can do is wait for Optimus and the others to return before we make our move. Then we can. They're back, Fix-It announced as he activated a ground bridge portal. The Autobots are returning, and they've retrieved Zero, Suzaku, and even CC. This got the attention of everyone present. Ratchet, Lloyd, Rakshata, Cecile, Ogi, Tamaki, Toto, even Chigusa on the side, as well as Nunnally, Cornelia, Euphemia, Kagaya, Sayoko, Shirley, Colin, Rai, Rivals, Nina, Millie, Monica, and Nonette all looked toward the swirling portal as one by one, all the Autobots stepped out. RC, Wheeljack, and Ironhide were the first to walk out, followed by Bulkhead and Bumblebee with Optimus in the back as the portal closed. However, Bumblebee also had passengers on him, with CC and Suzaku on his shoulders, and in his arms, still groaning and screaming in pain. Lulu, Shirley exclaimed at hearing his distressed cries, with everyone else looking in shock, even Nunnally gasped at what she was hearing from her unresponsive brother. No, Rai tried to stand up, but would have fallen over had Colin not caught him. What happened? Ratchet asked urgently. Megatron. Bumblebee scowled. Get him into the med bay. Ratchet ordered. No, we need to get him into your laboratory. Now, CC exclaimed. What? But why would? Just do it. CC yelled in an uncharacteristic tone of urgency and anger, something that caught Ratchet off guard. But he quickly got over it as he quickly led the other Autobots through the Ark's hallways, with all the humans following. Sayoko took Nunnally's wheelchair while Colin and Nonette helped Rai to his feet as they followed as well. Lelouch was placed on a table as CC and Suzaku worked to strap him down as he continued to shift his body, thrashing his arms out while still stuck in his nightmare coma-like state, as one could describe it. What's happening to him? Bulkhead asked with concern. It's like he's having some kind of nightmare. That's because he is. CC confirmed as Ratchet scanned Lelouch's body with Fix-It looking at the readings on his own handheld device. Injuries appear to be minor. Ratchet reported. But his brainwaves are in a chaotic state, his heart rate rising to dangerous levels. His body's been exposed to energon. Fix-It stated. Wait, no, scratch that. It's dark energon, he exclaimed in surprise, catching the other Autobots off guard, save Optimus. There's a dark energon anomaly coming from his brain, it appears to be the source of his state. His brain, Ironhide exclaimed. How the hell is that possible? Because Megatron has a Geass. CC revealed. The reactions of the other Autobots could not be described with mere words. What? RC questioned. Buckethead's got that power now too. Wheeljack also questioned. He does. Optimus confirmed. I saw it myself. What are you all talking about? Suzaku questioned. Long story short, it's a special power that Lelouch and a few others have. We'll go into the details later. CC said as she was at Lelouch's head, where she placed both her hands on the sides of his temples. Hold on, what are you doing? Ratchet questioned. I'm going to try and break him out of whatever Megatron has him under. CC answered as the Geass emblem on her forehead began to glow its titular red color. Have you done something like this before? Optimus asked. Yes, now please be quiet. I have to concentrate, CC stated as she focused as hard as she could, closing her eyes as she tried to project her powers onto Lelouch. CC's eyes opened, and she found herself falling down what appeared to be a tunnel, one that glowed with a dark purple color. She looked around to find distorted images of all Lelouch's memories, all in a chaotic mess as purple energy surges stretched up and down the tunnel. As she fell, however, she could feel an opposite force pushing back at her, which she attempted to push back against herself, trying to force herself deeper into Lelouch's consciousness. Lelouch, CC tried to call to him. Please, you have to listen to me. Whatever you're seeing, it isn't real. You have to overcome this. However, the force pushed CC back even harder, but as she listened more closely, she could hear the echoing sounds of a familiar laughter. As she looked around, CC gasped as she saw the images of Lelouch's memories burn away and change to reveal the face of Megatron. Hundreds of faces of Megatron all appeared throughout the tunnel as they continued to laugh, echoing through Lelouch's consciousness as well as his soul. So loud, CC exclaimed as she covered her ears. What is this power? With another push from this invisible force, CC gave a gasp as a new image appeared in her own mind. This image was also that of a face, but it wasn't Megatron's, or anyone else she recognized. It appeared to be a face made entirely out of stone with long curved horns at the top and soul-piercing purple eyes. She couldn't do it. She couldn't go any deeper as this very same force pushed her back. The emblem on CC's forehead changed from red to dark purple as she was forced out of Lelouch's mind and back to her own body with a scream, much to the Autobots, and Suzaku's surprise as the later caught her when she fell backwards. Sarah! Bumblebee exclaimed as the other Autobots came around her. What happened? Suzaku also exclaimed. It's too strong. CC muttered as she looked with shaky and terror-filled eyes. I can't break it. Just what did Megatron do to him? Bulkhead questioned. What kind of Geass does he have? Alright, how about we start with how the hell Megatron even has a Geass? RC also questioned. What are all of you talking about? Suzaku shouted, having enough of being kept in the dark. What even is a Geass? Suzaku, Optimus tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't have it. No, Lelouch is my friend. I have a right to know what is happening to him. Please. Suzaku pleaded with the last part, which was enough for the Autobots to look toward him with concern and understanding. CC even glanced toward Optimus as she gave a nod. Geass is a power that a select few humans, including Lelouch, all possess. Optimus explained. It is not a power that one is born with, but rather one that is given. This girl, who goes by the name CC, possesses the ability to grant Geass to others. She gave one to Lelouch in Shinjuku. That would explain why CC was always with Zero, or rather Lelouch, when they were on opposite sides. So, how does Megatron have something like this? Suzaku asked. I didn't give it to him, if that's what you're wondering. CC stated before explaining what she knew to the Autobots. And I don't think it was VV either. Megatron even said he didn't have to form a contract to get this power. How is that possible? Ratchet questioned. Yes, you said that only when someone agrees to your contracts, they can get a Geass ability. Fixit added. I'm not sure, but Megatron did mention something called the blood of Unicron. CC revealed. Dark Energon. Ironhide stated before it turned into a grunt of frustration. Of course, he'd find a way to use that voodoo garbage. Dark Energon, as in the same substance that destroyed your home? Suzaku asked. Yep. Bulkhead confirmed with a nod. Mao, RC's optics widened in realization. Remember the last time we saw him? After that mess at Ashford, he returned to the cons and we haven't seen him since. But I think we can all guess what happened after that. Suzaku's thoughts shivered at the mention of that name. He remembered Mao from when he not only kidnapped Nunnally, but also knew about him killing his own father. So, this Mao had a Geass too. It would explain why Lelouch was so scared at the time, other than Nunnally being in danger. In all likelihood, Megatron had subjected Mao to his experiments. Optimus theorized. He must have used what he learned and combined it with Dark Energon to somehow grant him his new ability. Okay, but what exactly is this ability of his? Wheeljack asked. He calls it his Dark Geass of Absolute Terror. CC began. It's unlike anything I've seen before. He's able to use this power to look deep into someone's soul to not only learn that person's worst fears, but also manifest them in the form of mental images, not too dissimilar to night terrors. It's powerful enough to affect humans, Cybertronians, or even code bearers like me. That last part really took them by surprise. I thought you said Geass doesn't work on you. RC stated. Guessing that Dark Energon stuff must have made it strong enough so it can affect me. CC assumed. So, Lelouch has been subjected to this, Dark Geass, and is experiencing nightmares. Ratchet deduced as they all looked at him as he continued to groan and scream, struggling in his restraints, his eyes scrunched closed, refusing to open. But, when a human experiences a nightmare, don't they wake up from it almost exquisitely, appropriately, immediately? Fix-It glitched. Not with what Megatron did. CC revealed. He said that he placed Lelouch in something I can only describe as a perpetual nightmare trance. It won't stop until his mind is completely consumed, and he falls into insanity, and even then, it won't stop, until his heart gives out. What? The Autobots, along with CC and Suzaku, turned in shock to see that all their human companions, consisting of Colin, Rai, Ogi, Tamaki, Toto, Shirley, Kagaya, Rakshata, and Sayoko, all from the Black Knights, along with Chigusa, Euphemia, Cornelia, Nonette, Monica, Lloyd, and Cecile from Britannia, and even rivals, Millie, and Nina from Ashford. But the one who had spoken out, who looked in a mixture of shock and fear, was Nunnally. It's not true, is it? Nunnally begged. Is Lelouch going to? She couldn't even find the words to finish. Nunnally, Optimus wasn't sure how to respond to her either. If it's not stopped, then, yes. CC confirmed with reluctance. He will die. Everyone had their own individual reactions to this revelation. Shirley gasped in terror, along with Colin, Kagaya, Rai, and Sayoko, with Millie, rivals, and even Nina appearing as if they had just been told that someone dear to them was dying. Oji's eyes shook, as even Tamaki's fists clenched. Toto's face carried not only worry for Lelouch, but anger, specifically toward the being who put him in this state. Nonette, Monica, Chigusa, and Cecile had saddened expressions on their faces, almost as if they were already accepting the outcome, though Chigusa paid a glance towards Ogi as she looked at him with sympathy. Rakshata and even Lloyd, though not as emotional as everyone else, had expressions of disappointment on their faces. Euphemia covered her mouth as tears were already forming in her eyes. First the disaster of the SAS, followed the fall of Pendragon, then the loss of Dreadwing, now this. Was she really going to lose Lelouch all over again? Cornelia had already fallen on her knees in despair. But nothing could describe what Nunnally was feeling right now. She loved Lelouch above all else, and even admitted to him that she would never want to live in a world if he weren't in it. So, hearing that there was a very real possibility of him dying all but shattered her. No, please no, it's not true. Nunnally cried. Please, Lelouch, answer me. She tried to call out to her brother, even though she couldn't see him. She almost fell out of her wheelchair, had Sayoko hadn't caught her. Lelouch, big brother, please. There's gotta be something. Colin stated. We can't just let this happen. We gotta do something. Maybe, if we get him to a doctor or, Ogi suggested. There is no doctor in existence that will be able to comprehend what's afflicting him. Ratchet said. And even if there was, Lelouch is running out of time. What about my Geass? Rai suggested urgently. If I use my Geass to force him awake, it could. Rai, you already used your Geass on Lelouch before. Remember, that whole mess with Mao. Bulkhead reminded him, causing Rai to look down in frustration while Suzaku and Nonette, and the rest of his friends looked in surprise. Rai has a Geass as well. What if you gave one of us a Geass? Shirley offered. Maybe it can. That's a 1 in billion chance of success. CC stated. I have no control over what kind of Geass you'd get, and there's no guarantee any kind of Geass I give is able to overpower what Megatron did to Lelouch. So, what, we do nothing. Millie exclaimed. I'm not sure there's anything we can do. Ironhide said in reluctance. That was the equivalent of being hit with a bullet for pretty much everyone, human or Autobot. That damn bastard. Tamaki shouted in anger as he kicked the wall to try and vent his anger. Even Cornelia clenched her fists as she remained on her knees, anger mixing in with sadness and devastation. Anger towards Megatron for what he did to her brother, as well as everything else he'd done, but anger towards herself at being so helpless. Even a burning fire flashed in Toto's eyes. Euphemia was already sobbing, with tears in Shirley's eyes as well. Suzaku appeared to be having it worse than most of them. He was supposed to be Lelouch's friend, but he allowed all this to happen. He wanted to blame Megatron with every fiber of his being, as Megatron knew that Lelouch was Zero the entire time but kept it secret from everyone, even him. However, the truth was, Suzaku could only blame himself for this. Lelouch wanted Suzaku to help him, but he turned him down, and even attacked him, all for his own self-fed delusions of peace and heroism. Bumblebee did everything he could to keep himself from acting out as he glanced at Lelouch, who appeared to be in an even worse state than 5 minutes ago. He was Lelouch's guardian. He was supposed to protect him. But he didn't. He wasn't anywhere near him when this happened. All the scout could do was hang his head in failure. Well, looks like we got ourselves quite a funeral, Lloyd said causally, only for Colin to punch him in the face, breaking his glasses as he was knocked down. Shut up. Colin tearfully screamed as she was about to beat him down even more, only for Ogie and Millie to try and hold her back. Colin, take it easy. Ogie tried to tell her. Take it easy. Take it easy. Colin screamed. Megatron massacred countless people to stage a rebellion, using us to take out Britannia, then came and wiped out half our army, our friends, and now our leader, the very same man who showed us we don't have to be helpless anymore, is about to die. And you expect me to calm down? Colin. RC quickly came over to her partner and kneeled down to her level, putting her arm on Colin's side as she looked at her with a stern glare. You really don't think I don't know what it's like to see someone you care about, harmed? RC asked, her stern look wavering slightly. We both know, but lashing out won't help Lelouch right now. You have to keep your emotions in check. But I can't. Colin stuttered as tears flowed down her face as she cried. The loss of Cliffjumper still obviously affecting her, and now the possible loss of Lelouch almost being too much for her to bear. RC brought her partner closer as she tried to comfort her as best she could. It was in that moment that Nunnally could feel the despair that everyone was feeling right now. Every individual around her, be they Britannian, Japanese, or even Cybertronian, many of which were all on opposite sides even, they were all in the exact same boat. They all lost everything. Their homes, their friends, their families, even hope itself almost felt completely lost. That and her own brother suffering a fate worse than death right now. It was too much for her. And she knew that there was one who was responsible for all of that. How can anyone do something this horrible, this cruel? Nunnally thought with tears flowing down her eyes as well. Megatron, why would you, how can you, do this? However, in this atmosphere of despair, CC glanced towards Optimus Prime, perhaps because she was hopping, he could provide some form of wisdom or even comfort. However, all she saw in his optics was anger and grief. Much like everyone else in this room, she had a feeling that he probably had it worse than anyone else here, probably even more so than Suzaku, Colin, Bumblebee, or even Nunnally. Not only was Optimus actively trying to help Lelouch in not only deterring him away from a path of darkness, but Lelouch had viewed Optimus as a father figure, and one look in the optics of the leader of the Autobots told CC that the feelings were mutual with him. But, it was in that moment, that CC was struck with an epiphany. Maybe, we can do something. That caught everyone's attention. Optimus. Megatron also attacked you with his dark Geass. I saw it, she stated, catching everyone by surprise. But you were able to overcome it. Optimus, is this true? Ratchet asked. Yes. Optimus confirmed. Megatron did attempt to use his ability on me. Wait, how could Optimus? I thought a Geass power was absolute, hence the names of the powers. Bulkhead said. It's a rare occurrence. CC began to explain. And it also depends on what kind of Geass power is being used. But, there have been individuals in the past that have been able to overcome the effects of a Geass if they possess a strong enough willpower. Well, if we're talking willpower, Optimus has got it in spades. Ironhide stated with something of a smirk. But it was not just me. Optimus said, much to everyone's, even CC's, confusion. It was also with the aid of the matrix of leadership. That got Euphemia's attention. The what? Ogi asked. A vessel of pure energy, the collective wisdom of the primes. Ratchet explained. Perhaps you could explain it from a more scientific standpoint. Rockshatta requested. The matrix of leadership is a tool that allows the user access to the collective wisdom of the past primes. Fixit explained. Many of the originals all lent a portion of their sparks to supply the matrix with power. It even carries the spark of our life giver, Primus himself. Well, I'm not exactly an expert with all this mystic wisdom stuff. Lloyd began. But, am I correct to assume this matrix is basically a computer that allows one to understand the past experiences of these older primes? That is one way of looking at it, I suppose. Ratchet said. Optimus, you mentioned the matrix to me and Lelouch on Kaname Island. Euphemia recalled as she seemed to be getting what CC was getting at. And if Dark Energon is the essence of Unicron, and the Matrix has the power of Primus and the original primes, it may have the power to purge Lelouch of the Dark Geass. Optimus finished, having caught on himself. That seemed to bring hope to everyone as most of the people and bots all looked to each other with smiles. So, what the hell are we waiting for? Tamaki questioned elatedly. Let's find this Matrix thing and put it on the guy. First off, we don't have to find it. Ironhide said. Optimus already has the Matrix inside him. That's wonderful. Shirley exclaimed with a wide smile. Second, Optimus can't just give the Matrix. Ironhide continued, much to everyone's surprise. What? But you said. Colin tried to say. Even if Optimus wanted to give the Matrix to someone else, he doesn't get to choose who he gives it to. Ironhide clarified. The Matrix makes the choice, not Optimus. How is something like that even possible? Suzaku wondered. Don't worry about any of that, Optimus doesn't have to give up the Matrix in order to do this. CC said. What do you mean? Bumblebee asked. If I make physical contact with both Optimus and Lelouch, maybe I can channel the power from the Matrix and into Lelouch, purging the dark energies that are consuming his mind. CC theorized. But, I've never done anything like this before, so I don't know if. Sarah, please. She heard Nunnally beg as tears were still flowing down her face. If it can help Lelouch, please, it has to work. It just has to. Please. CC saw the girl's pleading expression, and that almost seemed enough to solidify her resolve. However, it wasn't quite enough, until after she glanced up at Optimus, who looked down onto her with a determined expression of his own. When lives are in danger, preparation comes secondary to swift action, determination, and will. Optimus told the immortal. If you believe that using the Matrix in this manner can save Lelouch, then do it. Please. Please. Optimus had just said, please, to CC. As if, underneath the determination, he was almost begging CC to do this, to use the Matrix to save Lelouch. The fact that someone like him would speak to her in this manner, it only further strengthened her resolve as she closed her eyes briefly and opened them to reveal a strong source of willpower deep inside, as if a fire had just ignited in her heart. Alright, CC nodded. But, before we do this, we might need Nunnally's help as well. Everyone looked toward CC and Nunnally in surprise, but none were more surprised than Nunnally herself as CC addressed her directly. Lelouch's mind is stuck in a perpetual nightmare. I feel that if one is to pull him out of such a state, we need a voice that can truly reach him. Optimus has more than touched Lelouch's soul by this point, but you are the center of his life. I've sensed it in him. With mine and Optimus' power, and your voice, I have no doubt we'll reach your brother's soul. Everyone looked toward Nunnally with their own unique expressions. For Nunnally herself, despite her body being physically weak, her resolve was strong. If she can do anything to save the brother she loves so dearly, she will. Let's do it. Nunnally nodded. For this to work, we need to be alone. CC said to everyone else. I've never done anything like this before, so no distractions. Ironhide seemed to understand. Out. Everyone out, now. He said firmly as everyone, Autobot and human, all turned around and began to walk out the laboratory. So, we're all just gonna sit by and do nothing? Ogie asked. You heard the immortal. Bulkhead said. They got this. In the meantime, I'll be free to answer any and all questions many of you may have, because I've noticed most of you here all looked confused as to what we're talking about. Fix-It offered. I didn't even understand more than half what you guys were talking about. Rivals said, completely proving Fix-It's point. Yeah, you kinda lost me too at this unicorn thing. Nonet said. What does a magic horse have to do with this? Not unicorn, Unicron. Euphemia corrected as they all walked outside. Optimus already told me about all this. Well, guess it's time for a Cybertronian history lesson. Wheeljack said. Sayoko had to help wheel Nunnally closer toward Lelouch, where CC and Optimus were already gathered, the later kneeling closer to their level. She put a firm hand on the girl's shoulder, silently telling her that Sayoko had faith in Nunnally. Something Nunnally understood as she smiled and put her hand over Sayoko's in return before they parted, and she joined the others. Suzaku was the last to walk outside. A part of him wanted to stay and help as well, still blaming himself for Lelouch being in this state. But, he also knew that there wasn't anything he could do. So, he paid one final glance towards Optimus and CC as they both nodded in assurance toward him. Suzaku nodded back before he left the lab, leaving them all alone. Lelouch's condition seemed to be reaching its breaking point as he struggled against the restraints even harder, his screams becoming louder as his body shifted and fidgeted. Nunnally reached out to grab her brother's hand, hoping to be of some comfort to him. Once she touched him however, she could already feel just how much internal pain he was in. Hearing his cries and screams was almost heartbreaking enough, but actually feeling his pain was something else entirely. Give me your hand, Nunnally. CC requested as Nunnally reached her hand out, and CC caught it in her left hand before reaching out with her ring to place her fingers over Lelouch's forehead. Optimus. The last of the primes understood as he opened his chest plate, revealing the matrix of leadership inside, while also gently rubbing the tips of his fingers on CC's back to make physical contact as well. The light of the matrix shined over all of them as CC began to channel her power, reaching out to both Nunnally and Optimus before diverting all of that directly into Lelouch. Her hair began to wave as the Geass emblem on her head began to glow once again, briefly glowing red before changing to a bright blue, almost white, color. Lelouch was on his knees, the skeleton of his sister laying down in front of him as the flames began to close in around him, having changed from their typical orange to a dark purple. This is my fault, Lelouch muttered, his eyes having lost their color as it seemed he was ready to give up on his own life. The Black Knights are all but fallen, my friends are dead, Nunnally, I failed them, if I hadn't become Zero. None of this would have happened, I'm a monster, I don't deserve to live. He closed his eyes as the flames were closing in around him, threatening to consume him completely. I guess this is it for me. Lelouch. Suddenly, a bright white light shined down from the sky to help clear away many of the dark flames around him. Though they were still surrounding him, they gave him some space as he weakly looked up toward the source of the light to see CC, Optimus Prime, and Nunnally slowly descend toward him. Optimus appeared to be of equal size as that of a human, and Nunnally was no longer in her wheelchair with her eyes clearly open. What are all of you? Lelouch said, his eyes still void of light and color. Why are you here? We're here to save you, big brother. Nunnally told him. Why save a monster like him? He said as his voice slowly began to fill with emotion, but it wasn't too noticeable at first. You are not a monster, Lelouch. Optimus said. Megatron's victory was not your failure. He manipulated all of us from the start. You did the best you could. A little bit of color returned to Lelouch's eyes as emotions slowly began to fill him, but these emotions were that of regret and even anger. The best I could, Lelouch stuttered. I doomed the world to destruction. I waged war against an unbeatable force, Britannia has fallen and the rest of Earth is next. Megatron this is exactly what he wanted. And I gave it to him. He clenched his head in frustration. It's my fault. All of it is my fault. No, it isn't, CC said as all three of them floated around his body in the form of bright specters, surrounded by a bright white light that began to clear away the dark flames. Lelouch, please listen to us. CC began as she was the first to address him. You still have a contract you must fulfill with me. At first, I didn't think all that much about you, other than you were just another one of my contractors, much like with Mao and all those who came before. But, as I got to know you, the more I actually wanted to believe in you. You gave me a purpose, gave me a reason to want to live in this life. Don't throw yours away because of what someone else tried to force on you. Sarah, Lelouch muttered as his eyes became their lively purple again, and other humanly emotions returned to him as well. Lelouch, I have told you before, that when we first met, I did see someone who carried much anger inside. Optimus began. But I have seen goodness in you as well. A will to stand and fight for what's right, to protect those you care for. You have made many mistakes, yes. But you have learned from them, and you have saved the lives of many others, not just your own friends, but countless innocent people. You gave those people hope, and now, it is our turn to offer that hope to you. Optimus, Lelouch's eyes were already beginning to water as he heard the words of someone he considered his true father reach him. Finally, Nunnally hovered right in front of him, almost like an angel, as she smiled lovingly at him, gazing down with her beautiful lavender eyes. Lelouch, you mean the whole world to me. Seeing you like this almost breaks my heart, but you are not a monster. You are not a bad person. You're a good person, whom a lot of people tried to hurt and kick down, but you never gave up. You were always by my side, looking out for me. I told you that I wouldn't want to live in this world without you, and I mean it. I love you so much that I can't stand it. So please don't go away. Come back to me, to all of us. We're not the only ones who miss you. Lelouch's eyes widened as he thought back to everyone he had met and forged a bond with. Bumblebee, an Autobot he truly considered to be a friend. All the other Autobots that he admired and respected as true warriors who protected the weak, which is why he admired them above all else and tried to model himself after their example. To Ogi, Toto, Kagaya, Tamaki, Kirihara, and the other Black Knights, whom he trusted enough to reveal his identity and past, and they in turn, extended their trust toward him as well. Rai, his brother, whom he always looked out for, even before he learned of their relation. Yuffie, his sister, whom he had always loved, even after his exile. He trusted her and she was a gentle soul, too pure for this cruel world. Cornelia, his older half-sister, whom he once resented, but later learned that she still loved him, and had wanted to patch things up with her and re-establish their bond. To all of his friends at Ashford from Millie, Rivals, Nina, Sayoko, and even Shirley, whom he truly considered a friend, even if he didn't like her romantically like she did for him, but he still cared for her a great deal. Above all else, there was Suzaku, his first friend outside the royal family. Though they became enemies on the battlefield, Lelouch had vowed that he would help Suzaku overcome his past much like how the Autobots helped him to overcome his own darkness. And now they were on the same side again. Colin, another Black Knight and classmate, but not only one of his best soldiers but also a good friend. He understood her reason for fighting, having also lost someone he loved to Britannia much like her. Perhaps she was something more to him than he originally thought. He gave her hope, and she gave it to him as well, and he was not about to let her down. CC, also known as Sarah, someone who had suffered most of her life, even more so than him, but now she had become a valued partner and someone trustworthy, and he would do everything he could to help her overcome her pain. Nunnally, his beloved sister, whom he vowed to make this world a better place for her to live in, and while he will accomplish this goal, he had one other promise to keep, to never leave her side, and he never will. Finally, Optimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots, his mentor, his friend, and overall, father figure. From the moment they met, Lelouch had admired Optimus for his strength, loyalty, courage, and honor. He was everything that he wanted to be, and everything that he wished for this world. He saw underneath Lelouch's many issues for not only the good person he was, but the wounded soul as well, and had done everything to help free him from the darkness inside. Optimus Prime transformed Lelouch in more ways than one, and he was not about to disappoint him. "That's right, I'm not alone," Lelouch muttered as he slowly began to stand up, the dark flames finally dissipating. "I have people, friends, family, who are waiting for me." He leapt from the ground and hovered closer toward the light, reaching out his hand to Optimus, Sarah, and Nunnally, who all reached out to him as well. "I'm not going to give up. I'll never give up. I'll keep fighting, and I won't stop till this world is a better place. For everyone." He grabbed onto Nunnally's hand first as Optimus and Sarah reached around him, engulfing all of them in a bright white light. Lelouch's eyes began to flicker open, the purple ring that was within them had finally vanished. His vision was blurry at first, but as he began to pull himself up, he looked around to see Sarah and Optimus around him, the latter kneeling down with the former sitting at the side of the table he was previously strapped to, both smiling toward him. Did I? He heard some sniffles on his right and glanced in that direction to see something that he couldn't believe. It was Nunnally, but something was different than before, something about her had changed for the first time in 7 years. Her eyes were open. For the first time in 7 years, Lelouch was staring into the deep and beautiful lavender eyes of his beloved younger sister that he never thought he'd see again. She smiled upon seeing him as tears of joy flowed down her face like a waterfall. Nunnally. Lelouch couldn't believe it. Before he knew it, she had leapt from her chair to wrap her arms around her brother and bury her face into his chest. "You came back, big brother," Nunnally cried. Lelouch then began to cry as well as he wrapped his own arms around his sobbing sister. Tears of joy, frustration, guilt, and so many other emotions all began to pour all out at once. "Nunnally, your eyes," he cried. "I love you, Lelouch." She continued to sob with him. "I love you too." As the two siblings continued to share this moment together, Sarah couldn't help but shed tears of pure happiness as well as she glanced up at Optimus, who smiled and nodded as well, truly happy for both of them, as well as their success. It took a while, but the Autobots had explained to the group consisting of Colin, Suzaku, Shirley, Ogi, Rai, Tamaki, Toto, Rakshata, Kagaya, Sayoko, Chigusa, Cornelia, Euphemia, Rivals, Nina, Millie, Lloyd, Cecile, Nonette, and Monica everything in regard to the origins of the Cybertronian race. The battle between Primus and Unicron, and the creation of the 13 original Primes, as well as the concept of Dark Energon and its properties. They also had to discuss what they knew about Geass, for those who didn't already know, which led to them explaining the power that both Lelouch and Rai had. Rai also had to explain his status as a half-breed Britannian prince, which came as a huge shock for his classmates, and Cornelia in particular, which led to their discussion about VV and even about Clovis' experimentations with CC, which was the very reason he attached the Shinjuku ghetto in the first place. Many questions were asked, but overall, they all seemed to get the gist of everything, despite it seeming rather overwhelming for many of them. "Well, I honestly have no idea what to say right now," Lloyd commented. "That's a first," Cecile joked, trying to provide some levity, which did seem to work for some. But it was clear that most were still anxious while they waited for Optimus, CC, and Nunnally to finish their work. But they wouldn't have to wait for very long as they heard the loud footsteps of Optimus Prime round the corner, with CC right behind him. Nunnally was wheeled out, though one would think they were surprised at seeing her eyes open, none could be prepared for who was at her wheelchair. Lelouch's eyes still carried some kind of guilt as he looked at all of them, but there was a smile on his face. "Hello, everyone." "Lulu," Shirley screamed as she was the first to run up and hug him, already crying. Euphemia and Kagaya were right behind her as well. Lelouch was more than happy to embrace all three of them while everyone else was beyond relieved at seeing him up on his feet again. Among the most relieved appeared to be Suzaku, Colin, Rai, Bumblebee, even Bulkhead. Even Toto, Rakshata, Ironhide, RC, Wheeljack, and Ratchet had smiles of their own. "Welcome back, Lelouch," Euphy said as she and Shirley parted from him. "Thanks, I'm glad to be back," Lelouch said as he stepped a bit away and allowed both young women to see Nunnally. "Nunna, your eyes," Shirley clasped her hands over her mouth at seeing Nunnally's eyes wide open. "I'm so glad I get finally to see you, Shirley, and Euphy, I've missed seeing your face," Nunnally was crying once again. "I've missed you too, Nunnally." Yuffie wrapped her arms around her sister as Nunnally hugged her back. This was enough for many people around them to shed tears of their own. Your sister has the most beautiful eyes, Lelouch. Geass told him. I look forward to seeing more of them. Please do look after her for me. Lelouch said to Geass as he ruffled her hair slightly. Lelouch then glanced towards his Autobot partner with a smile. Hey B, good to see you. You too, partner. Bumblebee kneeled down to offer his giant metal fist for a fist bump, which Lelouch returned. However, his smile faded as he glanced at Suzaku and Colin. Both appeared glad to see him as well, but he knew they were suffering a great deal as well. Suzaku, Colin, I heard about Cliffjumper and Dreadwing, he said as their smiles faded. I'm so very sorry. Colin wasted no time in running toward Lelouch and hugging him, which he returned without a second thought. Both in relief for him coming back, and still in mourning over her loss. Lelouch looked up toward RC as well. Let be sure we avenge him, see to it his sacrifice wasn't in vain. All right. RC nodded with a serious, yet appreciate, expression. Yeah, you got it, Zero. Welcome back Lelouch. Toto smiled and nodded. Thank you Toto. Lelouch nodded before turning to his deputy commander. Ogi, good to see you as well. Yeah, you too. Ogi nodded. Come here, pal. Tamaki pulled Lelouch into a headlock as he gave him a noogie. How's it feel to come back from the dead, huh? Lelouch chuckled slightly but pushed Tamaki away. I wasn't dead, thank you. But it feels nice. He then turned toward his classmates as a wave of guilt washed over him. Millie, Rivals, Nina, I didn't mean to bring you guys into this. I'm sorry. Dude, what are you apologizing for? It wasn't your fault. Rivals told him. We're just glad you're alright Lelouch. You really had us worried. Millie said. I know, and I'm sorry. Lelouch nodded. He looked towards Nina as she didn't say anything but a look in her eyes told her that she was glad to see him as well. He then turned to his half-brother. Rai, you doing alright? A broken arm and a messed up leg, but otherwise, dandy. Rai joked. Oh, and don't worry about Breakdown anymore. Yeah, thanks to your bro here, Breakdown's pushing up lugnuts. Bulkhead stated. One less con to worry about, bonafide wrecker right here. Wheeljack congratulated. That's good to hear. Lelouch nodded. Welcome back, my lord. Sayoko bowed. I'm so happy for you and Nunnally. Me too. Lelouch gave a brief hug for his mate Guardian, who was happy to return it as well. Once they parted, Lelouch looked toward his elder half-sister. Hello Cornelia. Cornelia slowly walked toward her brother. Much like everyone else, she was overflowing with all kinds of emotions, among them was happiness and regret. Lelouch without warning, she pulled her brother into an embrace of her own. I'm so very sorry. She was already crying. I'm sorry I couldn't protect your mother, or Nunnally, or you back then. I'm sorry I tried to hurt you. I'm sorry for everything. I'm just so sorry. She cried as Lelouch comforted her, while deep inside, he was beyond happy at this as well, finally having the chance to mend the bond with his older sister. I know I don't deserve it, but please, let me stay with you, and I won't ever leave you again. That's fine with me, I wouldn't have it any other way. Lelouch told her sincerely. Well, this is certainly quite a spectacle. Lloyd walked up causally. At first, everyone was gearing up for a funeral, but it's now a welcome back party. Literally since pretty much everyone has said those exact same two words. And you must be Lloyd Asplund, the creator of the Lancelot. Lelouch assumed. Guilty, tried, and convicted. Lloyd confirmed, though Cecile here insists she helped a little. He referred to his assistant. Well, in that case, thanks for looking out for Suzaku. Lelouch told them before addressing to the two present knights of the round. Monica, Enneagram, you as well. And thank you for helping Rai, Enneagram. As well as looking out for Yuffie and Cornelia. Of course. Monica nodded. Yeah, no problem, Nonette smiled. However, his smile was quick to fade as he glanced up at Ironhide. Give it to me straight, Ironhide. How much of a loss did we have? With that, all celebrations ended as the Autobot veteran gave a grim answer. More than half our forces. We lost our heavy artillery, and almost all those who did make it back are injured, ranging from minor injuries to missing whole limbs. Lelouch grimaced at the thought of that before turning to the Autobot leader. Optimus, you know Megatron better than anyone else here. What do you think would be his next move? In all likelihood, Megatron's current objective will be to completely eradicate what's left of Britannia. Optimus answered. Contrarily, while Britannia itself may be in disarray at the moment, I do see them trying to regroup and fight back against the Decepticons. In response, Megatron will likely attempt to make contact with other Decepticons scattered across the galaxy, intending to use his full force to make this world into a foundation for his new galactic order under his rule. I see, Lelouch said. Listen up, all of you. He addressed everyone, human and Black Knight. I'm going to keep fighting, and without a doubt, the Autobots will as well. But, with everything that's happening now and what's going to happen in the future, to say it won't be pretty will be a gross understatement. The Decepticons at their fullest will be an even worse enemy than Britannia ever was. The world will likely fall into chaos for a time, people are going to die, and I don't know how many we can save. So, if any of you want out, just tell me now. I won't hold anything against you. You're kidding, right? Tamaki questioned. You really giving us an out after all that's happened? No way in hell. That's right, Lelouch, K-Gaia also said with a firm expression. You expect us to turn tail and run, knowing the world's gonna be torn apart. That's not going to happen. I told you I would fight beside you, Lelouch, even against these Decepticons. Toto stated. I have no intention of backing down now. If I leave, you won't have any proper nightmares to work with. Rakshata said. And I won't be able to work more with Cybertronian technology. I think I'll be staying here too. Yeah, I'm staying too. Ogi stepped up. Lelouch, you came to us when we had nothing and look at what we've built for that. We've built an entire army from nothing before, we can do it again. He turned to face everyone else, Autobot and human. I for one am not gonna sit by and watch as Megatron conquers, ruins, and kills countless lives. If I die here, fighting for a cause like this, it's about as good a cause any to die for. I know I probably won't be the only one. So, the question is, how you check out? Do you want it on your feet, or on your goddamn knees, begging? Even before I became a Black Knight, I never begged. I didn't beg to Britannia, and I sure as hell am not gonna beg to Megatron. He wants our submission. Well, I say fuck him. Let's fight that monster. Pretty much everyone looked toward Ogi in surprise. Hard to believe a short time ago, he was an indecisive and inexperienced individual when it came to fighting. Now he was a hardened warrior, willing to fight and even die for a cause he knew to be righteous. Chigusa looked at him in amazement before she smiled with a small blush. Not bad, Deputy Commander. Ironhide said with a smile as Ogi looked toward him with a confident grin. Well, looks like you got your answer. Colin said to Lelouch with a smile. And I'm staying, too. Where are you gonna be without your best pilot? Best pilots, you mean? Rai stood up, despite his broken leg. We're brothers, aren't we? And brothers look out for each other. Lelouch smiled to all his Black Knights, beyond happy at their support. Thank you, all of you. I'm in too. Suzaku stepped forward. I know I've got a long way to go, but at least now, I know I'm on the right side. He looked around to the other Black Knights as well as the Autobots. I don't expect any of you to forgive my actions overnight. All I ask, to all of you, is that you please give me a chance to make up for everything I've done. I'll see to it you get that chance. Lelouch offered his hand to his friend. I'm glad you're finally here, Suzaku. Lelouch said with a smile. Suzaku smiled back as he accepted the hand. Me too. Please, let me help too. Yuffie walked forward. I know, I'm not a warrior, and the special zone, it was my fault, please, let me join you, Lelouch. I want to fight and protect this world. So do I. Cornelia also stepped up. Much like Suzaku, I've got a lot to make up for, to everyone here, and my family. But, I want to change and fight for what's right. Please. Wherever Rai and these two go, so do I. Nonette stepped up as well. As do I. Monica also made a stand. Consider this my resignation from the Knights of the Round. May as well join in on the fun. Lloyd walked forward. Considering the two of us are traitors and all. He said, referring to himself and Cecile. What he means is, we would be honored if you would consider accepting us into your ranks. Cecile said humbly. Lelouch maintained his smile as he glanced up at Optimus, who nodded in approval. We will need all the help we can get. Optimus said. Euphemia Lee Britannia, Cornelia Lee Britannia, Nonette Enneagram, Monica Kruszewski, Lloyd Asplund, Cecile Krumi, welcome to the Black Knights. We sure about this? Tamaki whispered to Wheeljack. I get they're tough and all but, most of them did try to kill us. Hey, you heard the Prime, we need the help. Wheeljack replied. Plus, we had a few former cons even join the Wreckers, so this ain't new to us. We're in too. Millie stepped up alongside Rivals and even Nina. No way we're sticking to the sidelines in all this. We might not be expert scientists or ace nightmare pilots, well Nina might be the first one, but I'm sure we can at least contribute somehow. Rivals also said. Yes, I'd like a chance to stand here too. Nina stuttered at first before finishing with a firm resolve. I'll not only have a chance to fight against the Decepticons, but maybe I can get the chance to understand why Princess Euphemia would also fight for these people. She paid a glance to Euphy, who smiled with a nod of her own. Lelouch wasn't quite sure about this. Though he was glad that his friends would be close to his side, he didn't like the idea of them getting caught in the middle of a fight against the Decepticons. At least this way, they'll stay here where they'll be safe. Shirley told Lelouch. And, with the way the world is now, here might be the safest place on Earth. Good point, Lelouch admitted before turning back to his classmates. Alright, you guys are in. Alright, Rivals cheered with a fist bump. In a non-combative function which we will determine later. Ratchet made that perfectly clear, almost like a stern parent. That's fine, Millie accepted. This of course, caused Lelouch, Nunnally, Rai, Colin, Suzaku, and even Monica a great deal of happiness knowing their friends and classmates were not only safe, but now contributing to their cause. I'll join too. Chigusa stood up. It's the least I could do, to make up for my past. Alright, sounds good to us. Ogi nodded with a smile, causing Chigusa to blush slightly as she played with her hair. Very well, let's get to work. Lelouch got everyone's attention. First, let's access what we currently have at our disposal. Kagaya, where's the rest of Kyoto? They, along with Kates and Diathard, are currently with Peace Mark. Kagaya answered. So, we are still in contact with them? Optimus asked. Yes. Kagaya nodded. Good. Optimus replied. Let us organize a meeting with Peace Mark's leadership as soon as possible. We'll not only need their connections and resources, but we may need to talk about a permanent joining between our two organizations. That's a good idea. Lelouch nodded. Fix it. What about our informant in the Chinese Federation? Li Shink is on standby and is currently awaiting instructions from us. Fix it answered. Alright, let's get him on the horn as well. Lelouch instructed. We've lost a great deal, so we're going to need to find a way to recruit more manpower. What about bot power? Bulkhead asked. No offense to you guys, but bots got more experience dealing with cons and we could use the extra help. We've been trying to make contact with other Autobots through the ARC systems for months, but came up empty, aside from Wheeljack who flew in by coincidence. RC said. And the jackhammer's trashed, so I can't fly out and get reinforcements either. Wheeljack added. Yes, that does seem like a problem. Toto agreed. Excuse me, I have an idea. Nina nervously raised her hand, getting everyone's attention. You said the Decepticons would try to call for additional forces, right? Well, since they use the same kind of technology you do, maybe we, could hack into their communications and use their own broadcasts to get a longer range. Ratchet seemed to follow her train of thought. If we were able to get into their communications and slip in a special Autobot frequency, we could piggyback off the Decepticons' own signal and make contact with our scattered forces. Ratchet exclaimed in jubilation before he gave a triumphant laugh. Nina Einstein, you are a genius. This caused Nina to look in surprise before a blushing smile formed on her face. Alright, everyone listen very carefully. Lelouch got everyone's attention again. This might sound harsh, but for the moment, I think our best move should be to let Britannia and the Decepticons fight it out. The way we are now, if Megatron discovers us, he can easily wipe us all out. From here on, we're going to be working quietly, from within the shadows. We'll rebuild our fighting force, stronger than ever, and we won't make a move till we're ready. I know, that while we wait, people are going to die, but there isn't anything we can do about that without risk of exposure. The best option we have, is to build ourselves back up so that when we're ready to go to war, we'll have a chance to actually win it. Lelouch is correct. Optimus agreed. While I said before that preparation comes secondary to swift action, determination, and will, but at the same time, we cannot so recklessly charge into battle if our enemies hold a clear advantage. So, until we are ready, we will take our time, until the opportunity to strike comes. That makes sense. Cornelia nodded with everyone, some more reluctantly as they didn't like the idea of not helping people who were probably going to die. But at the same time, they knew Lelouch and Optimus were right, they can't afford to act recklessly. Nunnally, though feeling the same as everyone else, knew she could trust Optimus and her brother. So she reached out to grab his hand, getting his attention as Lelouch looked into her lavender eyes once more, seeing a look of determination deep inside. "We'll follow your lead. I trust you, both of you." She looked toward both Lelouch and Optimus. Lelouch nodded as he clenched his sister's hand more firmly. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, so let's get started." As the Black Knights and Autobots began to discuss what their next move should be, CC glanced up at the Autobot leader as an idea came to mind, believing she may have found a way to tip the scales of power in their favor, if only a little bit. But at this point, they needed every advantage they can get. After the discussion came to an end, CC and Optimus met alone in an empty cargo bay, the Immortal requesting to speak with the Prime alone. "CC, is something wrong?" Optimus asked. "Well, no, nothing wrong per se." CC began before she sighed. "Optimus, I don't doubt you or Lelouch, I agree that we need to take the time to build our forces, but Megatron's dark Geass, it's unlike anything I've seen before. We can't let him roam freely with a power like that. Do you have a means to take this power from him?" Optimus asked again. "No." CC shook her head. "Once a Geass is given, it can't be removed. I don't know how exactly this dark Geass of his works, but if I can't even lift the effects off someone affected by it, it's unlikely I'll be able to remove the power entirely. What do you suggest?" Optimus continued to ask. "A way to level the playing field between you and Megatron." CC revealed. "Optimus Prime, let us form a contract." To say Optimus was surprised was an understatement. "You wish to grant me a Geass?" "Yes." CC confirmed. "I know, it's asking a lot. Like I've said many times before, I have no control what kind of Geass you'll have, and every type has its fair share of limits, not including the risk of Geass overwhelming its host, which we've all learned from what happened with Mao and Rai, but you were able to overcome Megatron's dark Geass with not only the power of the matrix of leadership, but your own will. Out of everyone I've met in my immortal life, none have ever had a will that's as strong as yours, Optimus Prime." Optimus said nothing but continued to listen to every word that CC had told him. Megatron's power, she shivered. "It is pure evil, I've experienced its power, and we both saw what happened to Lelouch. Not just the power itself, but to have someone like him, just looking into your soul, into your own fears. I've been shot, stabbed, burnt alive, blown up, and died in so many ways that would drive lesser people mad. But I never once felt so violated than with what Megatron did to me, and what happened to Lelouch was even worse. I would never wish something like that on anybody. Megatron's Geass didn't just come from the Dark Energon, it came from his own twisted desires. Geass always manifests itself based on the user's deepest wishes, reflecting their inner self. The fact that it manifested in Megatron is something that takes advantages of his victims' terrors and fears, that pretty much says it all. But you, Optimus, you've transformed the lives of everyone around you, including me. I know this is a lot to ask, but if we formed a contract, maybe even through the Matrix itself, it'll give you a power that'll equal Megatron's, maybe even surpass it. So, please, Optimus." She bowed her head. "Let me do this for you. Let me give you the power to fight this demon." When she looked up, she was surprised to see Optimus kneeling closer to her level with a gentle smile on his face. "Sarah, I would be honored to receive such a gift from you." That took her by surprise. A part of her had hoped and expected that he'd say yes, but to actually hear him say it, with a smile on his face, and even call it a gift no less. "I am aware of the risks involved, but you are correct." Optimus began. "Megatron's new power is grossly disturbing, and he will likely use it in his quest to conquer and reshape not only Earth, but other worlds as well. And that is one abusive power that we absolutely cannot allow. If you believe that forming a contract with me, even through the Matrix, can help to stop him, then I will accept this power, risks and all. I trust you, Sarah. Sarah looked up to Optimus with an emotional smile. He trusted her. She almost couldn't believe he said that. Once more, she felt a great deal of hope building in her chest. And she had hoped she could get used to that feeling. Very well. Let's do it. Sarah nodded as Optimus opened his chest plate to expose the matrix of leadership to her. He held out his hand, allowing Sarah to step on as he slowly raised her closer to the matrix, allowing her to reach out and touch it. Once she made contact, she began to channel her own power directly into it, and by extension, Optimus' own spark. Once that connection was established, Sarah gave a gasp as her Geass emblem, once again, began to glow a bluish-white color. Sarah gasped as she found herself in a completely new location. She no longer appeared to be in the Ark, but it almost seemed as though she was standing on a long cloud that stretched on for miles in all directions with no end in sight. The sky was dark, but lit up with so many stars, it was almost like she was in space. Optimus. Sarah looked around, only to appear that she was all alone. Hello, Optimus. Where am I? In a place of sacred solitude, young one. Sarah then felt an enormous presence approach her, but as it got closer, she began to feel multiple presences all around her. 4 to be specific. Once they appeared before her, she gave an audible gasp as they carried a presence among them that felt powerful and heavy, but also kind and gentle. 1, in the middle, was a towering white metallic being, with bright whitish blue eyes. Similar to Optimus, he carried with him an air of strength and virtue, but also one of compassion. The one on his left was female, with a light silverish pink metallic skin, and glowing pink eyes. Her aura seemed that of understanding and experience. The one on the far right was male, with a primarily reddish magenta color, white glowing eyes, as well as what appeared to be a white metallic beard on his face, while also wearing a dark purple cape. He carried an aura of wisdom. The final presence, coming from behind her, was much smaller, but by no standards, weaker. He was clearly male, and around the same size as Sarah as he bore a cyan-green metallic skin with blue eyes. The aura that came from him was that of intelligence and boundless energy. Hello there. The middle white one addressed the immortal girl. You must be Sarah, or do you prefer CC? Who are you? She asked in a state of amazement. Really? The short one asked almost in a deadpan expression. And here I thought you seeing us through the matrix would be a dead giveaway. The female gave a slight stink eye toward the little one. Do not be so indifferent with her. The poor girl's been through such turmoil, the least we can do is be courteous. The little one rolled his eyes in response while the red one with the cape and beard chuckled. I apologize for the antics of my siblings. Allow us to properly introduce ourselves. I am Alpha Trion. I am Solus. The female introduced. And the little rude one is Micronus. Hello. Micronus nodded, extending some form of civil greeting. And I am Prima. The white one in the middle introduced as well. I'm certain that you can figure the rest out. It didn't take long for Sarah to find out who these individuals are as she looked in amazement and awe. You're the past primes, Optimus predecessors. Not just any, little one. We're the originals. Micronus revealed. The original. Sarah fell to her knees. I don't know what to say, she immediately bowed down to them. I am truly humbled to be in your presence. Rise, child. Solus encouraged, allowing Sarah to stand up, albeit shakily, still slightly overwhelmed by their presence. What is this place? Are we, inside the Matrix? Sarah asked. Yes and no. Alpha Trion explained. The Matrix of leadership carries a portion of the sparks of each of the original primes, along with Primus himself. Though our bodies are long since dead, our spirits, if you will, live on through the Matrix. As such, we dwell in a realm that exists outside the normal confines of space and time, offering our wisdom and experience to those who bear the Matrix, in this case, to Optimus. This is the realm of the primes. Sarah looked in awe, before she noticed something. I'm sorry to ask this but, Optimus said that the originals consisted of 13 primes, but I only see 4. Oh, the others are here too. Micronus answered. They just didn't want to meet with you. And, there is also. Solus gave a slight cough to stop the original Minicon from finishing his sentence. There is another prime that had forced us to remove his spark from the matrix for important reasons, but that is unimportant at the moment. Sarah was certainly surprised at that and could sense a heavy air the mention of this other prime they mentioned, especially from Solus, but she chose not to dwell on it as she allowed the primes to speak. Our brethren, for a lack of better term, were not too pleased to feel your presence enter the realm of the primes or channeling your power through the matrix. Prima continued. A few even wanted to destroy you, but we sense you mean no harm, so we came here to talk. I'm sorry, I never meant to violate your sacred realm or anything, Sarah stuttered. You wish to give Optimus your power. Solus finished. The power of what you call a Geass. Yes, Sarah confirmed. If you know about that, then you must know the reason why I want to give him that power. We are aware of that. Micronus replied. You think that the power you'll give Optimus will counter the power Megatron wields. His dark Geass is unnatural. Sarah said. We can't let him wield that power. He has to be stopped. Young one, listen carefully. Alpha Trion told her. There is a reason why Megatron's ability is so dangerous, and how he was able to gain such a power without forming what you call a contract with someone like you. What is it? Sarah asked. The power you call Geass, we believe to have originated from Unicron. Prima revealed. Chera's eyes widened in shock as she almost felt her heart stop at that. Yes, we did expect that sort of reaction. Micronus observed. I had no idea. I promise that I never knew. Sarah stuttered, still not over this. I don't intend to damage the Matrix or hurt Optimus. It's all right, you don't have to apologize. Solus assured as she kneeled down closer to Sarah, causing her to back up slightly. But as Sarah looked closer into Solus' eyes, she could almost see a gentle and understanding expression, almost identical to one that a mother would use when consoling her child. We didn't expect you to know something like that. Is this the reason the other primes were so angry? Sarah asked. Yes, Solus confirmed. But we know you harbor no ill intent, which is why we are speaking now. That probably explains it, Sarah muttered in slight realization. Why Megatron got that power, without forming a contract with a code bearer. Dark Energon is the origin of Geass. That is our theory, but we have no definitive proof. Alpha Trion said. Geass could be descended from Unicron, yes. However, that does not make it evil. Sarah looked in further surprise as Prime spoke next. While Unicron is literally evil incarnate, as is his blood, power itself is neither nor good or evil. It is the intent of the user that makes it so. That being the case, despite your power possibly being connected to Unicron, it is still possible to offer a contract to Optimus and grant him a Geass. Solus revealed. And we can use our power, as well as that of the other primes, to filter it, so to speak. We can purge the corruptive elements so that the power won't overwhelm his mind. But much like with yourself, we will have no control over what kind of power he gets, or how strong it will be. Alpha Trion revealed. That is based on Optimus' own innermost desires. That's fine, Sarah said. If means helping him, then I'll do whatever it takes. Hold on. Micronus stopped her. There's just one thing we need to know from you. Whenever you give a Geass to an individual, you always define them as contracts. By definition, a contract is a binding agreement by two or more individuals that mutually benefit them. Those that get your power are benefited by said power, but how do you benefit from it? She didn't quite expect to ask this. I benefit by helping Optimus. If we stop Megatron. No, that's not what I asked you. Micronus interrupted. Let me clarify. What was it you wanted from your previous contractors? Like that boy that Optimus seems so fond of. You offered him a power, but does he do for you in return? What is it you truly want from giving these powers? Is it the same thing you want from Optimus? Depending on your answer, the other primes won't allow you to form a contract with him. Sarah didn't know what to say at first. This was honestly the first time she ever really thought about this. But as she looked back on it, on all the other contracts she formed in the past, she also thought back to all the times she's died. Every painful method that was used to kill her, as well as all the physical and emotional pain that she endured while living for so long. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that back then, all she wanted was for it to end. I've wanted to die. Sarah finally answered as the four primes listened carefully. Or at the very least, get rid of this damn immortality. Sure, it might come in handy at times, but all in all, it's a nightmare. I've died so many times that I've honestly lost count. I've seen people come and go, I've tried to form friendships and bonds with people, only to watch them fade away. I couldn't take it anymore, and if I couldn't die, I just gave up. That was what I wanted. To end the pain, above all else. The primes each had serious expressions on their faces, but Sarah wasn't done yet. But now it's different. Sarah continued. What I said before was true, I do desire to help Optimus because I want to stop Megatron. But, deep inside, I just want to stay with him and everyone else. Ever since I met them, Lelouch, Optimus, the other Autobots and Black Knights, and their friends, something inside me changed. I just want to stay with them. I think I'm starting to feel connections with them, real connections again. Tears were already forming in her eyes. I don't want to lose any of that. Megatron will destroy everything if he's not stopped. I don't want to go back to hell, where I'm all alone, unchanged, with everything else changing and vanishing all around me. Please, I know it might be childish, maybe even selfish, but please. I am begging you. Sarah kneeled and bowed her head to the primes as she cried. Just let me stay with them. That's all I ask. I'll do anything and everything you want. Just don't make me leave. She exclaimed as she sobbed. Very well. She slowly looked up to see each of them, Prima, Solus, Alpha Trion, and even Micronus looking down to her with smiles. We'll allow it. Prima nodded. Sarah almost couldn't believe it. Really? Yes. Solus confirmed. We'll allow you to form this contract with Optimus and grant him a Geass. And even use our power to purify it of its corruptive influence. Alpha Trion added. Chera's tears continued to flow, but not of sorrow or sadness, but from joy. Thank you. However, Micronus teased with a smirk. We expect something in return. Think of it as a contract of our own. We'll let you give Optimus a Geass, and even purify it for you. But in return, you must do everything in your power to help him. To not only stop Megatron, but the dark power that he wields. If left unchecked, Megatron's actions could send all of existence on a one-way path to total annihilation. So, will you accept this contract, Sarah? Prima asked as other large individuals all began to surround her. Each was of their own unique size and shape, some more intimidating than the others. One even bore large wings, one had green tentacles, and another seemed to carry an aura of manipulation for some unknown reason. She could only assume that these were all the other primes as a total of 11 figures surrounded her. Will you devote yourself to cause of freedom and justice that Optimus and his allies fight for? With a sense of determination and fierce willpower flowing through her, Sarah stood up on her own 2 feet with a steeled resolve. Yes, she declared, unintentionally quoting her most recent contractor. I hereby accept the terms of your contract. Then let's begin. Prima said as all the primes that circled her began to glow, along with Chera's body. The Geass emblem on her forehead glowing a bright white light as she was surrounded by the primes, ring of light before it shined in all directions. Till all are one, all the primes said in unison. Sarah gave a gasp as she was brought back to reality, stumbling on the floor of the Ark's cargo bay as she looked toward Optimus with an expression of awe. I saw them, the primes. She stuttered and exclaimed in a tone identical to that of an excited child talking to their parents. All of them. I never felt a presence so strong, Optimus, did it. However, she stopped once she saw Optimus smiling a face. That very same smile told her that he already knew everything that happened. Once she got a good look in his optics, and she could see the emblem of a Geass within both of them. But it wasn't red like her previous contractors, it was a pure white, which matched perfectly with the blue glow in his eyes. Till all are one, Optimus said, his smile still present. One that Sarah returned with a smile of her own. Till all are one. From Earth, the Decepticon warship known as the Nemesis had broadcasted a message that was reaching its way to the farthest corners of the galaxy, to the other Decepticons that remained in hiding, scavenging for energon to survive. This message they would receive was a call to arms from their leader, one that they could not ignore. Fellow Decepticons, take heed. Your leader, Megatron, lives and calls to you. Though we remained dispersed and scattered throughout the cosmos, our home of Cybertron forever lost to us, we are all still Decepticons, united by a common purpose. I have found a new world, rich with energon, a world from which we shall use as our foundation to build a new galactic order. The time has come to put aside our differences, and act as one under my undisputed leadership. Only then can we take this galaxy and return our race to its rightful glory. Working together, we can raise up our glorious empire once more, and crush all who stand in our way. All hail Megatron. However, unbeknownst to Megatron, or any other Decepticon that may be listening, on Earth or scattered in space, there was a hidden message carried along with the Decepticons' call to arms. One that was hidden carefully by a special code that only Autobots could identify. And it would reach many other Autobots taking refuge in space, even those that were on the Ark during the Exodus, but were lost and scattered when the ship was pulled into the unstable wormhole once they left Cybertron. This is Optimus Prime. To all surviving Autobots who hear this message, I ask you to join me in a remote corner of the galaxy, on a small planet rich with energon. However, this world has also become a target of Decepticon conquest, who have already begun to usurp this world and its inhabitants. Our team is small but strong, and we have been joined by the inhabitants of this planet who have chosen to take a stand alongside us to defend their home. True warriors, if not in body, then in spirit. I know we have all lost much, comrades and friends, even our home. Though Cybertron may be lost, hope remains. Join us at these coordinates, so that we may finally put an end to the Decepticons' ambitions of conquest and destruction. Safe journeys. Till all are one.